All right, please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll start with the public portion of our meeting. Michael Northrup. Would you like to speak?
You've got to get you on the podium.
Michael or Donald?
Michael.
Okay, I've got Donald over here.
Must be somebody else.
Okay.
So, good afternoon. I am Michael Northrup. I live in Springs. I'm a homeowner. I vote here, a taxpayer, and I'm on the Waterfront Advisory Board for the town, and volunteer position. And my family's been out here since, 1875. My kids are sixth generation. They weren't all Northrups, but in my family. And my great-great-grandfather built the little wood church in Amagansett across from the mobile station. And I am I love this place and care a lot about it. So I just wanted to get that out. You guys have got a super tough vote coming up about this Deepwater project. I've been trying to keep up with it. It's been difficult. My daytime job is I work for a foundation in New York on climate change. It's called the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, and I've been working on climate change since 1990. It's a battle we're all losing. It's a catastrophe coming our way like a freight train. Impact on our shorelines and our oceans is going to be catastrophic if we don't deal with it. And I know you all have said in your election campaigns and other things that getting to 100% renewable is something that you want to do, and it's kind of a question about how to do it. I get that. I think there's no silver bullet on the climate change question or how to solve it. I think there's a lot of silver buckshot out there. I think one of the bigger pieces of buckshot is offshore wind, potentially, if you can figure it out, if you can price it right, if you can make sure it's not impacting other interests that care about the places where those turbines are going to be. So lots of balancing that's going to need to happen. But I don't know how we get to 100% renewable in New York State or in East Hampton or any coastal area of the United States without offshore wind being a big part of the mix. And it's an amazing resource. We all know that. We could be carbon neutral on the Atlantic coast and probably still have power left over and export into the grid around the country. I mean, that's an amazing thing. Solar is a huge part of the solution. Onshore wind is a huge part of the solution. But for coastal regions, offshore wind is going to be a big part of the solution too. So I've tried to, read the reports and the economic analysis and the positions, and God bless you guys for dealing with this. It's really hard, and I don't have definitive answers on all that stuff, and I can't tell you that I know exactly how it's going to turn out. I think from the numbers I've seen, I don't think some of the worst estimates that are out there about price are as bad as those ones. I think we don't know because the contract is kind of a little bit hidden, and it would be nice if we kind of knew what was in that contract, right? And I think it's idiotic of the industry not to share that. I think we've got a lot of developers out there now competing in this space, and inevitably prices are going to come down. I think they probably feel like if they hide the data a little bit longer, maybe they can get higher prices a while longer, but that's not going to last that long. It is going to change. So I hope you'll find a way through this, because I think somehow you're going to find that offshore wind is an important part of the solution. I think you got to figure out how to do it and how to price it and where to put it and those things. But I hope you'll let that opportunity happen somehow, with using your wisdom to figure out how to parse through that. You know, I know there's this benefits package on the table. I've tried to understand it. It seems like there's a lot of stuff in there, and you've been very smart about negotiating the value of that benefits package up. You know, good work on that. It could be bigger, I'm sure, but there's a lot of opportunity for transition in there and thinking about it. I think you've got 2 more years of siting decisions and hearings and so on that will allow this thing to continue to evolve, that hopefully would give you more confidence as you get through that kind of 2-year period, that you can get to a place that you're more comfortable with maybe than you are now, if some of you have doubts. But getting, you know, letting that thing come ashore in Hither Hills and missing that benefits package seems like that might not be the best approach. It would sort of take you out of the game a little bit. I also see this just huge amount of activity along the coast. It sounds like there's about 6,000 megawatts of committed offshore wind along the East Coast now. You know, there's a lot of supply chain jobs and all kinds of other economic opportunity that's going to come with that. If New York State seems confused, some of that supply chain stuff is going to go to other places. I think it's sort of pragmatic to think we should try to capture as much of that as we can. I don't know why some of that can't be in Montauk. A lot of it's going to be in New York Harbor. Massachusetts hopes it's going to be in New Bedford. You know, Block Island's talking about some of it being in Block Island. Norfolk, Virginia wants it. So there's a competition for what looks like it's going to be a gigantic industry here, you know, with lots of assembly and monitoring and et cetera, et cetera. So it would be great if we could find our way into that mix. I think these are sustainable jobs over the long term. So anyway, I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I hope you can figure out a way through this and take advantage of the good things, be pragmatic about it, and try to find a way to move forward, because I think there's just, the upsides seem enormous, and the downsides of climate change are so horrible, you know, and the costs to the marine environment from climate change and the benefits from doing this, you know, are just, not that they're exactly equal, but the costs of climate change are so huge that I hope that we can live with, you know, hopefully not giant costs from moving ahead with an offshore wind opportunity along the coast. So, you know, good luck.
Thank you,
and thanks for your time. I really appreciate being here.
Okay,
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Alice Tepper-Marlin?
I wish I could say my family had been here for 6 generations. I would have been very lucky if they had, but I have been living in the Springs for 35 years, and we in the Springs are so, I live the equivalent of maybe a very short walk, like 2 city blocks from Pussy's Pond. So I do want to take a minute to thank you all for the wonderful transformation that has been taking place there. It's really beautiful. A couple of days ago, actually last weekend, I walked by and I saw not only swans, but 8 heron there. It's really, really beautiful, wonderful changes. Your decision on whether or not to grant landing rights in Wainscott Beach to Deepwater Wind carries very weighty implications for this beloved town, which many of you have been here for generations in, and for those of us who are new, we think we love it just as deeply. Sustainability and the town commitment to transform our power sources to 100% renewables by 2030 is the platform on which 7 of you ran. And that garnered very strong support from the voters. With the South Shore Wind Farm, East Hampton is well positioned to obtain that ambitious goal. Without it, I don't see any path. I would love for it to all come from the sun, from solar, from efficiency. We have 10 kilowatts of solar on our roof, and we're just about to put in a Tesla battery so we can store it as well. But all of the research that's been done tracking the rate at which solar has been installed here, and Gordon Reiki has done a wonderful job in tracking a lot of that for us, doesn't give me any hope that solar alone is going to get there. The choice between fossil fuel and renewable power combined with greater efficiency will have enormous impact on marine life, on our farming, and on the resort community that's central to the life of this town. The transformation to renewables offers hope for all of us on this very beautiful planet, on this especially fragile and beautiful community which is so threatened and already damaged by the ravages of climate change and acidification of our oceans. Just take a walk in Montauk. East Hampton would be foolish to deny landing rights to Deepwater Wind. If landing rights in Wainscott are not granted, Deepwater Wind will land on state-owned parkland. It's good that we'll have the wind anyway. Likely the cable will come over in Hither Hills and New York, and New York has given the okay on that already at the state level. Communities to our north have just signed on to much larger wind farms than ours, but we would lose two things that are important. We'd lose the benefits from that $8.5 million package, and we would lose some position of influence over the construction stage, which could ameliorate any possible adverse effects on the process. The adverse effects on marine life of burning fossil fuels is far more deleterious than any possible adverse effects of siting and operating the wind turbines. I would love, as some have advocated, for us to take another 10 years to study this, for us to be able to have the perfect wind farm out there. But in the meantime, every year that we delay, we are further acidifying our ocean. We are allowing climate change to accelerate and continue. That's a bad deal. We're better off moving along at a faster rate. And the relevant fossil fuel plants on Long Island already contribute heavily to climate change. They cause asthma, they cause big fish kills, and they acidify our waterways. The sooner we can move to a transformation away from those fossil fuels, the more control we'll have over our utility prices, and the less rapidly climate change will progress. Noise during drilling the site for the turbines is a real issue, but we are promised it will be done during winter months, and the adverse effects from the noise on marine life can be quite effectively mitigated in a number of ways to protect marine life. I believe that government at some level, I don't know whether that can be done at this stage locally or whether we have to depend on the next roughly 20 approvals ahead of us at the state and federal level, but they should require an upper limit on the noise levels and actually require, rather than just depend on promises, that pile driving will stop if any endangered species are cited. We have a commitment from Deepwater Wind for that, and that's great. I'd love to see it in the contract. In Europe, there are some 3,600 offshore windmills already in operation. And I have been trying to read through the large number of scientific studies on the effects of these windmills. Now, I know that the geography is a little different in every site, but all of those that I've been able to wade through have not shown any adverse effect on commercial fishing, and in fact have shown some benefits. Benefits because the turbines themselves act as artificial reefs, and the quantity and quality of marine life on them has increased substantially. Now, some of that, a lot of that is very small forms of fauna and creatures, but they attract, not only do the reefs themselves attract some fish, but that increased amount of small marine life brings commercial-sized fish to the sites. So there have been some cases in some of these sites where there's been an increase in the commercial catch. I just read one day before yesterday that showed an increase in bluefin tuna. So there will be some change, possibly, probably, in the mix of marine life, but it could be a good change. It's not necessarily a bad change. We shouldn't be afraid of all change. And we are already experiencing significant changes around the world in fish catches resulting from climate change. Don't think this would be bigger. On cost, Deepwater Wind's bid is fixed. It was the least expensive, as we all know, of all the qualified bills. And I have some confidence in the statements that it will cost us only $1.19 a month. That's not bad. If we were to rely instead on more fossil fuel, the amount of increases are unpredictable and can spiral up very fast. Here we know what the cost is, and whatever happens to fuel costs, the wind costs nothing. Once it's built, there's not, we protect ourselves against that kind of variation. So I say bravo for the town's solar and energy program, Energize East Hampton. Everybody here, everybody who lives here, can and should take advantage of this terrific education and incentive program. You can enroll at energizeeasthampton.org. So, in sum, the offshore wind farm is a great fit with the increase in the installation of solar, because the wind blows at different times than the sun shines, and it's a very, very beneficial combination. Ocean winds tend to be strongest at the times of peak electricity demand on the east end, afternoons, cold snaps, and heat waves. It's a great fit. I say that it's time to return wind power to its 350-year history in East Hampton. That's the story that science, economics, and common sense tells us, and it's the story that our beautiful historic windmills send us. So I know that you're struggling with difficult technical questions here, but I hope and implore that in the end you'll allow those cables to land here and do everything we can to support this great transformation away from fossil fuel. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and all of the enormous amount of time and attention that you spend not at meetings where we're watching you, but reading through materials, discussing this, and trying to do the right thing for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice.
Thank you.
Thomas Burloff?
Let me see if I can raise this a little bit. Does that work? Is this, do I need to get a little closer?
There you go.
I remember last time I did this, I was bending over.
You'll have to get your stool, Tom.
I know. That's what my cousin used to say when he came to visit. He said, Tom, you got to step down from the chair you're standing on. Anyway, my name is Tom Bjorloff, and I'm going to talk a little bit about process. I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that have become apparent, obvious, clear in the last few days that probably most of you don't know about, that is relevant to the overall decision. Now, I want to say a little bit, I've been in this business since the 90s, early 90s. One of my first customers was the German government. Angela Merkel, actually, who was the environment minister at that time. I've been involved in the development of offshore wind in Europe as a consultant at the policy level. We actually started in Copenhagen and Middelgrunden, but that's a different story. That was the hippie days of my life. One of the things that I really don't think we need to debate or argue about is whether we want renewable energy. or how much of it we want. And I agree, we shouldn't wait. We need to implement this really fast. I don't think we need to litigate the pros and cons of renewable energy, but we have a lot of experience with it. And we should learn from that experience and try to go through a less emotional process. I did speak for 3 minutes at the joint hearing, and I wish I'd had time to complete what I was going to say at that point. But what we need to pay attention to is how we do it. How we do it is absolutely essential. And before I start talking from my prepared remarks, I should just let you know I did make a statement at the joint hearing that offshore wind, if not implemented properly, will create many, many new fossil power plants. That's what happened in Germany, dozens of them. And if you look at the data, as I've done since as long as I've been in this business, you want to measure, you want real data. It's great to say that if I do a wind farm here, I will reduce carbon. Didn't happen in Germany. If you go to Germany right now, and you can probably even go and get an invitation from the government, they've had 2 attempts to figure out why, following the massive investment in offshore wind, carbon has hardly changed. That's a fact. Now, there are ways around that, and that's my point, and that is the design of the systems is becoming clear for making wind effective and making it reduce all the bad effects of carbon. Now, some of you may have been know at their LIPA board meeting. There was one last week. And I think somewhat reluctantly, PSEG admitted that they have a study underway that will be published in, I think they said in August, for how many additional fossil peaking or fast start plants will be needed on Long Island. The answer could be 0. I don't think it will be. But they admitted precisely the point that we discussed at that joint hearing. Why are they looking at building new fossil plants? Well, the fossil plants we have right now are old. They're about to be retired. They don't have the capability to follow the output of energy from a wind farm. They're too slow. It's a big problem. There are other ways to deal with that through battery technology, and that is the way the Germans are beginning to do it right now and the Dutch are doing. But anyway, I just want to give you a perspective of this. This is not a black and white issue, how you do this. This is a very complex issue. And I also want to say, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit now, that there's absolutely no decision for the boards, either for the town board or the trustees, to make right now. That's a misconception. The reason I got involved in this process was I got a little bit interested when I heard statements that offshore wind would provide 100%. Am I too close to this?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. Is this better?
Yep.
I kind of like to hear myself. 100% renewable energy is not attainable from offshore wind. It requires much more than that. It requires other parts of the puzzle. Offshore wind is not, as people say, offshore wind is intermittent. It is not intermittent. That's absolute. Intermittent means it's on and off and on and off. It is not like that. It's on for days and then it's off for days, and it's on for days and it's off for days. And one of the charts that I showed at that hearing showed that. It was actually a composite chart of all of the offshore German wind farms. So when you say you're going to have 100% renewable energy from wind, what are you going to do during the 2 to 3 days when there is no wind? And in particular, there will be no wind in the summer when you really need it out here during peak. The load on the system on the South Fork and in East Hampton is about 3 times average annual load during peak moments in July and August and September. Now, what do you do if the wind farms don't produce? And wind farms do not produce when there's too little wind or where there's too much wind, and this is going to happen. So what I've been looking for is, what is the solution for that? That's the real problem that the utility has to solve. PSEG solves it the way you shouldn't solve it, by building new fossil power plants. There's already a proposal for that, for such a plant in Yaphank, a 300 to 400 megawatt natural gas plant specifically for meeting those moments when you do not have wind energy. So my point is, you need to do more. If you're going to do offshore wind, you're going to have a problem if you don't. You're either going to get more fossil plants, and you're going to be like in Germany. But let me get back to the procedural issue here. What really puzzled me and really made me want to become involved in this was that I was told that the town board intended to, or was pressured to, and the trustees were pressured to, sign leases or easements before entering into something called Article 7. That's not true. That is just the wrong way. And I think it's now being clarified, and I think that the Department of Public Service, actually the chief attorney, chief counsel, has clarified that. The purpose of Article 7 is for a developer to obtain what's called a certificate of necessity and convenience. If you don't have that, you can't build anything. It's an absolute requirement on deep water to get such a certificate. That is required under New York statute. There's no way around it. Now, to be able to do that in a way that takes into account various people, interests that are affected by such a project, and to gather a variety of approvals and licenses that are required. It's more than you guys. It's more than the state. There's a lot of things that have to happen for deep water to get their certificate. The state has instituted, this was instituted in 1970, under the public service law. It's called Article 7. It's very simple. Here's what happens. Deep water goes to the commission and files an application for Article 7. In that application, they ideally specify a preferred route, a preferred solution for the connection of the wind farm. And then they also specify alternatives. Then the proceeding starts, and it starts with what's called a public statement hearing. Public statement hearing is essentially allows anyone who wants to speak, anyone who is affected by, potentially affected by the project, to speak for the record in front of an administrative law judge. Why does the state do that? The state does that precisely so that you're not going to run into decisions where later on people are going to say, I wasn't heard. You railroaded us. Following the public statement hearing, the proceeding itself starts, and it can go two ways. In most cases, if there's no controversy, the proceeding goes into a settlement negotiation. The parties involved sit down around the table and start negotiating. That's kind of what Deepwater is telling you to do right now. It's not ripe yet. You're not there yet. If there is controversy, then there won't be, a private settlement supervised by an administrative law judge. There will be actually an evidentiary hearing with parties. And you can have lawyers. You don't have to have lawyers. I've been party to many of these proceedings, not just Article 7 rate cases and things. It's a very good way to resolve differences and get all the facts out and get all the permits and all the easements in one place so that people can make calm and intelligent decisions. And also, what is really baffling about this sort of confusion, I think, about signing things before Article 7 starts, is that the LIPA contract with Deepwater specifically requires Article 7. It's right there. No way around it. So the question then comes up, and I think that that's in front of you, and I want to try to take the pressure off of you. I don't think there is any decision for you to make at this point. I mean, maybe you want to say, we want to have more information. That makes sense. It doesn't matter what you do. This process is going to take 1 to 2 years anyway. So you could say that, well, why don't we just sign the easements right now anyway? Why don't we let Deepwater do it the way they want to do it and we just sign it? Well, there are two problems with that. You are elected officials. You may not have all the facts. You probably should go through the proceeding and get all the facts and be under the guidance of some expert, a judge, who is used to these kinds of proceedings. That way you will not make any mistakes. But the second issue is I think, more important. If you sign a lease or an easement at this point, you take yourself out of the proceeding, you will essentially become a spectator. Why would you want to do that? You're representing the freeholders. The town board represents, I think, pretty much the same people who elected them. And that's your interest, as your responsibility as an elected board. You represent other people. You have to do your due diligence. So this whole thing about signing and makes no difference. Nothing changes. Article 7 happens anyway. The judge comes here, and they do this very well, by the way. They come in and they hold seminars for people to explain how this process works. And I think at the end of it could be a year from now, it could be 2 years from now, you will come to a conclusion, and I think you're all going to like it. Now you say, well, that is a delay. No, that's not a delay. Deepwater is part of a federal lease as part of the Massachusetts leases. It's OCSA 0486, I think. It's a little part of that. The federal process is not even halfway done yet. Deepwater won an auction. They acquired this lease, a provisional lease, I would want to call it, in an auction in 2013. At the end of 2017, their site assessment proposal was accepted by BOEM, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, who is the part of the Interior Department that actually does administer this process. So they got that a few months ago. The COP, that's the Construction and Operations Plan, which is required before Deepwater can start building anything, is due on April the 22nd, 2022. So you have a lot of time. There's nothing you will do that will slow down the building of this wind farm. You're not going to take 4 years, I can assure you that. So, in my view, it doesn't make any sense to rush things, and I think that Chris, you have had a chance to talk to the Department of Public Service, and I think that you will pretty much agree with what I said about the process. So I'm not going to speak for you, obviously, or speak for a lawyer. Now, let me give you also a sense of how big and important this is. This is not just about East Hampton. I said there's no way a wind farm can ever create 100% renewable energy for East Hampton. I don't know why someone put that out a few years back. That is just so incorrect and so misleading that it's sort of should be punished with something. This is just, it doesn't help. Energy is a very difficult topic, subject. It doesn't help to start making grand statements and then pretend that you live up to them. However, I want to give you two pieces of information that I think you are not aware of. One is pretty straightforward, and this is something that LIPA revealed less than a week ago. There's a second Article 7 proceeding that's about to be filed. What's that for? It's a separate one, but it has some interconnection, some relationship to it. Well, LIPA and PSEG have determined that they need to build a new underground high-voltage transmission line from the canal substation to a new or not yet built substation in Wainscott. They haven't even found the land yet, but they have now. They actually communicated this, not voluntarily. They were told by the Department of Public Service to provide their plans. So there is a large substation, not the private substation that Deepwater has to build under the Deepwater contract. There is another utility substation about to be built somewhere in Wainscott, and I believe it's a 138 kilovolt line. What does that make sense? What is that? Well, 138 kilovolt, depending upon the cable you use, you can get 200 to 300 megawatts out of. 200 to 300 megawatts is more than East Hampton will ever need. That cable is not there to supply East Hampton. I initially thought it was there to balance the wind farm, and it may do some of that. But it's too big for that. So what's going on here? Well, one thing that's going on is this is probably a good idea to get used to Article 7 because it's going to happen more than once. The second one is a more subtle decision made by the LIPA board at their board meeting last week only. It wasn't covered by the press, and it's a little hard to explain what it is because it's very technical. I'll leave you a copy, but and you actually need an expert to read it. Basically, what LIPA has been an isolated, in a way, utility in New York. They've done things pretty much the way they want, and they have kept the state out. That's been LIPA's position for years, and they have been able to pull that off. I've been a critic of that. I didn't think it was a good idea, but our politicians, and our key politicians, Kenny Laval and Fred Thiel, were all behind keeping Long Island separate. I used to argue on the other side that it doesn't make any sense. What LIPA did at the board meeting, in the consent agenda, it wasn't even discussed at the meeting, was that they created a mechanism for the state to essentially overrule LIPA and say to LIPA, we need, I'll read the title of it. It's called a public policy requirement for transmission planning. Public policy requirement, that's a state requirement. It comes from the New York Independent Systems Operator, or it comes from the Department of Public Service. Essentially, what LIPA did was they put in place a procedure where New York State can come in and say, we have wind farms, say up in the Massachusetts area, east of here, or anywhere else, and we need transmission capacity for those across Long Island. And you have to build them, and we'll pay for them. That's big. Fred Thiel doesn't know this yet. Someone should tell him. Shit will hit the fan. What is contemplated right now is not a smaller wind farm to serve the interests of East Hampton. It's a massive project, potentially, to pull several wind farms. 400 megawatts is the plan, actually, in the governor's plan, across Long Island to New York City. Do you want that? Probably not. So what do? You want your own wind farm. You want Deepwater, I understand that. And you want what can meet the needs of the East End. You don't want CO2, but at the same time, you probably don't want to become the energy offshore superhighway from Montauk or East Hampton into New York City. Well, LIPA just put in place procedures where that could happen. And as I said, when you deal with issues like this, and I have done most of my career, the devil is in the details. You better know your data and your facts and figure out what to do. I am fully behind offshore wind. I'm fully behind offshore wind on the scale that the governor wants it. But do you want it to come through here? If you do, great. And here's my final point. LIPA has been known in history for doing things secretly, hiding things. The state doesn't do that. The state comes here and they have an administrative law judge that will lay out the facts for you. You can form your own opinion. No one is going to force you or rush you. And you don't have to be rushed because Deepwater will not begin to be built until 2022. Thank you. Let me give you my copies of my...
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Cy Kinsella?
Keep on forgetting how tall Tom is. While John is doing that, I'll just say, you know, I agree exactly with what Tom just said. Tom and I came to the same conclusion within a day or so of each other, but from completely the opposite directions. I came to the conclusion after looking at the documents and the contract and trying to find out what we need or why things were structured the way they were, whereas Tom, so I came from a micro angle, and Tom came from a macro angle, and we met in the middle and said, oh, now we know what this is about. I want to start just on one point today, and it's a little detail that is in the contract, and it's probably the only technical specification of any accuracy in the contract. Someone tell me when that loads up. And that is, the issue I want to concentrate on is the conduit that Deepwater Wind plans to bury under Wainscott Beach. And that specification, so just press that.
That's forward.
Okay.
Go back.
Okay. This is the conduit. It's 24 inches in diameter, and the cable, the 138 kilovolt cable that they propose to put through the conduit is about 8 inches in diameter. That means the conduit is 9 times larger than the cable. And this is one of the questions that has been bothering me for a long time. To drill for more than 2,000 feet a conduit of 2 feet in diameter is very expensive, especially when it's going 30 feet under the ground, under a beach, and you're drilling horizontally. The wider that conduit is, the more expensive it is exponentially, and the greater the risk that the borehole collapses in on itself. So why were they putting in this huge conduit for just one cable? If you look through the details of the contract, it doesn't stipulate anywhere the number of cables that they plan to put through that conduit. It keeps on referring in the contract to the cable here, the cable there, in the singular. So it's deceptive, and it's easy to think that, oh, they are just naturally talking about one cable. But if you look at the interpretation, it says in the beginning of the contract that the plural is to be treated as the singular and the singular is to be treated as the plural. So if it said in the contract, we plan to put one cable through and that cable is going to be 138 kilovolts, that would be fine. But the contract doesn't say that. And these are bright people, and they wrote that contract with intention, with legal advice. And my concern is, why did they not just state in the contract, in the easement, what they were doing? So if you look at the... You can actually fit two 138 kilovolt cables in that conduit. Now, as Tom pointed out, a 138 kilovolt cable can carry at least 200 megawatts, maybe more, depending on the distance and the transmission loss. You can actually fit three 138 kilovolt cables, so that will give you a capacity of 600 megawatts, possibly even 800 megawatts, but I've been on the conservative side here. They may even decide to use a different size cable. That's a 275 kilovolt cable. It's about 9 3/4 inches in diameter, and that one cable has the capacity to carry 400 megawatts. And again, you can fit two of those and three of those. So on the upper end, you have a total capacity through that conduit, possibly of 1,200 megawatts. So we're being told, or we're being presented with a wind farm of 90 megawatts, and they're building a conduit, so they're planning for the future, which is not a bad idea, that could possibly be up to 1,200 megawatts. So I received a letter just before this meeting. Someone handed me a letter from Deepwater Wind. It was actually in response to an earlier letter I wrote, and it was quoting my letter in many places. And their response was, in many sections, we have made a public commitment that we won't put more electricity through this conduit, or we have made a public commitment. And they keep on saying that. And a public commitment is terrific. My question is, why isn't it in the contract? Because public commitments can change, and people in organisations can move around and their policies can change, but a contract can't. So when Deepwater Wind says, oh, but we've made a public commitment, that's not good enough. It's got to be in the contract. And a contract is designed to save confusion later on. It's identifying what we all agree to. So down the road, 5 years down the road, we know exactly where we stand. The next thing I want to mention to you is, and a lot of people have been talking about this, there are lots of cables that go around Long Island already, and the fisheries have had no problems up to date. And people show images like this one here. And that's true, there are a lot of cables around. All these cables here are communications cables, fibre optics, coax, things like that. There are no cables existing in this fashion that have alternating current carrying high voltage electricity. They do not exist. There are some cables that carry electricity, namely the Cross Island cable running into Long Island, and you've got the Neptune cable running from New Jersey. I believe it's from New Jersey. They're 330 megawatts and 660 megawatts. So they're large cables, they're serious cables, they do carry electricity, but they're direct current. And direct current has a far lower magnetic field than alternating current. And that's an important difference to make. So here's our 90 megawatt wind farm that we're looking at. and that's going through Wainscott. But if you look at it and look at the broader picture, there's the Rhode Island, the Block Island wind farm in red. That's the recently approved deep water wind farm of 800 megawatts. That was approved earlier on in the week. That's the Vineyard wind farm. That was approved earlier on in the week as well. That's another 800 megawatt wind farm. They're the lease areas that have been under negotiation and auction, etc., by BOEM. There are 2 new lease areas which are under consideration. They were proposed last month off the coast of Long Island. And now all these wind farms, all these lease areas, they have to make landfall somewhere. And they have to carry the electricity, and it's a lot of electricity. This is the proposed path of the Deepwater 1, the South Fork wind farm. I was actually hoping today that this bid would be announced for the Connecticut, Deepwater Winds Connecticut bid, which was 200 megawatts. So it's a dotted line, so it's proposed. The wind farm that Tom was talking about, which has been mentioned by LIPA several times, a 400 megawatt wind farm, again, that could come in from Deepwater Winds South lease. It actually could probably come from Deepwater Winds North lease as well. You've got these 2 lease areas here, which are vacant. They actually get a lot more wind. Now, these numbers I'm putting here of 800 megawatts, they're probably a lot larger than that. I'm just putting those as representations. But they've got to make landfall. The Bay Street wind, that area lost out in a bid earlier on in the week, or the week before last, so that's vacant. And the other half of Vineyard Wind's lease area is vacant. And you've got these 2 lease areas down here. Now, all of them, of course, can't go through that conduit. The conduit isn't that big. Suffice to say that a lot more can go through that conduit. And I would like to know exactly why Deepwater Wind is presenting this to us and putting in a conduit when this is the closer reality. And back to Tom's point, we have to be aware of what's going on before making a decision. I don't know what's going on. There's so much information that I'm unaware of. The contract is barely a contract at all. And I don't think the trustees need to make a decision. I don't think the trustees should be pressured into making a decision without all the information. And that's important. How can you make a decision without the information? And this is a part of the strategy that worries me most, and that is there's a huge amount of pressure that's being applied to people to make a decision, but at the same time they're denying you the information to make that decision correctly. So to Tom's point again, if the trustees are going to have a resolution, I would suggest that the resolution simply be to request more information so you can make an accurate decision.
Thanks, Ty.
Thank you, Si. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board? You already did.
I just have one response to something before. Take me 1 minute. Is that permissible?
Well, this wasn't meant to be a debate.
It's not a debate.
Yeah, it's only.
Let the other speakers go first, please.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the word that both speakers went through.
Okay, you could be next, Bonnie. What? Oh, but whatever you want, either.
Okay. Hi, Rachel Grusin. Thank you so much for your time. So a number of points. We've heard a lot of information tonight. Ultimately, enough of the debate of wind versus no wind. That is not what this is about. Let's take this conversation to a much higher level. We're getting wind in New England. We're getting wind from Maryland to Maine. Just this week, 400 megawatts was leased, lease area of 400 megawatts was issued in Rhode Island, 400 megawatts in Massachusetts. Deepwater Wind has received the Rhode Island lease pending approval of the permits and the purchase price agreement. It's going to happen, but you want to do it right. We've already heard that statement this evening. That is what this is about. This cannot be a one-off project. You have major planning frameworks in place. NYSERDA did one, Rhode Island has done one, Massachusetts is doing one. They all have major state planning frameworks in place. LIPA has not followed those type of frameworks in this process, in this project. You are in an information vacuum. You have Cy and Tom and others and me doing months and months of research, essentially on behalf of this community and on behalf of the trustees and the town board, to piece apart the details of this project, to create transparency, to identify what exactly the cable's transmitting, what type of build-out of a substation we're getting, essentially in a residential area in Wayne-Scott, how many EMFs, what is the volume, the magnification of the EMFs coming through this cable. We are not experts. I have not in 9 months told you how to evaluate what the answers are on this. I am trying to emphasize that we need an architecture and a framework for evaluation. There are 11 trustees. You're not supposed to be the experts on this either. Your role in this is to represent and protect the public trust. You're in an information vacuum right now. You have a moral, if not a legal obligation to protect the natural resources and the public trust of East Hampton, to protect the health of the people of East Hampton, as well as of our economy, of our human health, as well as those natural resources. You do not approve a project until you can assure to the community that you represent that there are either zero negative impacts on this or manageable impacts that you can mitigate with proper controls. So that is what this is about. In terms of an architecture, if you want to know what New York State is doing, they have a New York State offshore wind master plan. They took years to develop it, well, maybe only 2 years. It's been moving fast. They had an enormous amount of stakeholder outreach meetings. They looked at shipping channels. They looked at environmental impacts. They looked at bird migration patterns, et cetera. They had hundreds of people involved, if not thousands, in a planning framework. They also have a NYSERDA cable landfall permitting study, which has looked at all the places on Long Island from New York City out to about West Hampton, I think Riverhead, whatever is Brookhaven, south of Riverhead. They didn't go further east of that, but they are identifying the landing points with a dense criteria, with a dense review process. There's a NYSERDA offshore wind policy options paper in order to look at the pricing schemes of the different proposals to make sure there's transparency so that we're not having conversations where Cy is doing an excellent job picking apart this pricing in a private power purchase agreement where we don't even know what we're being charged and we have to work backwards to deduce that we're about to get all of Long Island ratepayers are going to charge an increasing amount for the next 20 years while the prices decline for energy. We're also in an information vacuum on what the actual needs are. LIPA's been the only source of information, if I think I understand this correctly. LIPA's the only source of information on what our actual needs are. I've written about this in the paper. We have a design problem at hand. And if you really do care about carbon dioxide emissions, you design a solution that matches the design problem at hand. LIPA is telling us that we have some huge design issue, some huge peak issue that we have to solve. I would like someone other than LIPA that wants to protect its monopoly to tell us if we have that issue. Because if you look at the New York State Independent Systems Operator data, they're showing that since 2011, the energy demand on Long Island is decreasing. It's in the paper that I read. I'm not an expert, but I'm doing my homework. You should all be doing your homework and do not approve this project until we have lots of people doing their homework and we have some transparency on this process. Back on the framework, New York's NYSERDA did an ocean action plan. They're doing years of studies to figure out how to mitigate the impacts to the fisheries and this and that, and the EMFs and the noise coming off of these. Rhode Island, I mentioned before, their special areas management plan, which they developed for when Deepwater came to them. What that plan does is it puts pressure back on the developer. It gives some sort of control on the developer, best management practices. They had science that actually impacted how the developer installed the footing of the cables. We learned this at a good governance forum. They drilled horizontally instead of vertically, et cetera. So you just want to do this the best way you can do it. And we've been taken advantage of. That's kind of a subjective, well, it's all subjective, but I think we've been taken advantage of, and we've been put pressure on by a developer without the third-party ombudsman people or the planning frameworks in place. BOEM, Bonnie's spoken about the BOEM, the federal best management practices for fisheries mitigation plans. They're not being followed on this project. Deepwater has come in and for years has had meetings with the town board members, perhaps with natural resources and planning, with the Energy Sustainability Committee without one public hearing on this until 2 weeks ago. This has been a conversation that has happened with a select group of people without enough experts in the room and enough transparency. None of us have enough information right now to move this forward. Let's see, I'll wrap up with a few other points. Many of us are just trying to understand whether do we fully understand what we're getting here? I've spoken to renewable energy experts from other places, from Massachusetts. Nobody invests in 60 miles of cable for a one-off project unless A, they are making tons and tons of profit off of this, or they're building additional infrastructure. It's like landscape ecology 101. You build a road through the Amazon, you get secondary growth off of it. You get more and more infrastructure off of that one initial road. This is not a one-off project. Do we understand the EMFs, even if it's minimal? Do we have a full understanding of the environmental, social, economic impacts of this cable coming through, what could happen to the substation in Wade Scott, so on and so forth? 60 miles of digging up the seafloor and Wayne Scott. This is about development and how you manage development. And wind might be some great answer in terms of carbon dioxide, but it's a development footprint, and you do not want to develop the human footprint in our oceans or on land unless you have controls and measures to check it. I think I've taken up a lot of your time. I just want to see if there are any great points that I really want to make. I just don't greenlight this because the environmental activists are crying out climate change. Every experienced professional, environmental planner, conservationist, renewable energy expert that I've spoken to is either straightforward opposed to this project or asking to hit the pause button so that we can do further review. I don't hear from the people that are professionals that do this every day that this is a great project. In fact, I've heard for 9 months, I support wind, but this is not a great project. Or at least let's make sure we know it's a great project before we green light it. So, also, it's not a done deal. I don't feel, I said David and Goliath once before, don't feel that you're being pressured by New York State and by a developer and by even, and all these economic development agencies. Even New York City Economic Development Agency wants a piece of this because Deepwater Wind announced a couple weeks ago in a New York City EDC press release that they want to create their landing station in Brooklyn, in New York. Their hub for building this thing off of Cox Ledge between Block Island and Massachusetts and Martha's Vineyard could be in Brooklyn, in New York. There are all of these developers that want to create economic benefit out of this opportunity. So don't feel pressured that you have to make these choices now because these heavy hitters are coming in and telling you have to do it. Do your due diligence and follow your legal frameworks. Sounds like Article 7 could help on this. Okay, yeah, and $8 million is a drop in the bucket. And if they try to go through state land, let them. Do not be these are manipulation tactics. It's so obvious. I just don't see why we're, why there are articles in the newspaper worried about losing $8 million or losing control over this because it goes through New York state land. Let it. It's going to be hard to go through New York state parkland. Let it. Your responsibility is not to lose $8 million. You're following the dollar sign. That's not what your responsibility is. You're supposed to protect the public trust and the interests of the people that elected you. And on that, I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel. Bonnie?
How's that, okay? Everybody hear me? Hi, I'm Bonnie Brady, Long Island Commercial Fishing Association, and also for this, I am a member of the Fisheries Advisory Committee for the town of East Hampton. And I'm going to try to be brief. But what I am going to do, we sent a copy, I don't know if you got that, but of the Fisheries Advisory Committee wrote a letter and submitted it to the town board yesterday. And I'd like to read it quickly, briefly, and to the point. Dear members of the town board, and by virtue, you'll probably get a trustees version, but the same principle exists. On behalf of the East Hampton Town Fisheries Advisory Committee, we implore you to delay any decision re Deepwater Wind leasing access rights at Beach Lane and Wainscott for the South Fork Wind Farm until Deepwater Wind and the Fisheries Advisory Committee have formally negotiated and approved a comprehensive fisheries research, monitoring, and mitigation and compensation plan, FishComp. We furthermore do not support any attempt by Deepwater Wind or Cornell Cooperative Extension to engage in a financial contract, as they have reportedly been in talks to do so this month, in an attempt to unilaterally take the Fishery Advisory Committee's jurisdiction over this process through the supposed creation of an ocean industry sustainability program with an oversight board within the community benefits package offered to the town. Any attempt by Deepwater Wind and Cornell Cooperative Extension to usurp the FAC's role to create a FishComp is an overall attempt by Deepwater Wind to whitewash and buy the results of the mitigation process, thereby harming the town of East Hampton's fishermen. The town board must say no to that effort. The East Hampton Town Fisheries Advisory Committee outlined briefly in a letter to you on February 21st what a FishComp for all stages of development of an offshore wind project should look like, and I'll make sure you guys have a copy of that if you don't already. Utilizing the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management's 2015 final report, Development of Mitigation Measures to Address Potential Use Conflicts Between Commercial Wind Energy Lessees, Grantees, and Commercial Fishermen on the Atlantic Outer Continental Shelf, as the model which highlights BOEM's Best Management Practices, BMPs. A copy of said report was delivered to each of you and is again attached here. We believe these BMPs are effective guidelines for the creation of the FishComp for the South Fork Wind Farm and any future wind projects that may have an impact on the town's fishing industry. The plan to negotiate and create a FishComp was further discussed by FAC co-chair Bob Valenti at the LTV televised meeting on March 6, 2018 of the town board. We believe a FishComp written by the FAC's fisheries representative, Julie Evans, working in conjunction with the FAC, would take approximately 1 year, as we have previously stated. Data must be collected from local nearshore and offshore fishermen and the National Marine Fisheries Service and Northeast Fisheries Science Center to determine what site-specific studies would capture baseline fisheries data, which scientific monitoring is best, and determine what mitigation methods and compensation models should be required for the town of East Hampton's fishermen during the construction and operation of the South Fork Wind Farm. On April 2nd, links were shared with the town board to the Rhode Island Ocean Strategic Area Management Plan, SAMP, regulatory language, re-coastal fisheries mitigation for offshore wind energy projects. Beginning on page 479 of the document, and that's also included, the SAMP detailed specific regulatory language that was created that laid out the path forward for fisheries mitigation with offshore wind. It made a negotiated mitigation a, quote, necessary condition of any approval or permit of a project, end quote, by their CRMC, their Coastal Resource Management Council. I go through this list, and I don't want to bore everybody here, but the most important part, specifically regarding mitigation, that was part of the regulatory process was, quote, "Mitigation shall be negotiated between the council staff, the Fisheries Advisory Board, the project developer, and approved by the council. The reasonable costs associated with the negotiation, which may include data collection and analysis, technical and financial analysis, and legal costs, shall be borne by the applicant. The applicant shall establish and maintain either an escrow account to cover said costs of this negotiation or such other mechanism as set forth in the permit and approval condition pertaining to mitigation. This policy shall apply to all large-scale offshore developments." Too much for me, huh? Oh, gosh, okay. Good luck. "And other projects as determined by the council. Deepwater Wind was required as a condition of any approval or access permit to negotiate and pay for a negotiated mitigation monitoring plan for its Rhode Island fishermen prior to that approval. Why would they be unwilling to do so for the town of East Hampton's fishermen unless they have something to hide? The only way to allow for a transparent fish comp plan, however, is by allowing the FAC to be the lead on this process, with Ms. Evans as our FAC's chosen fisheries representative, not through the creation of an ocean industry sustainability program with an oversight board by Deepwater Wind and Cornell Cooperative Extension, one that is outlined in Deepwater Wind's community benefits package to the town. We know that for the Block Island Wind Farm, Deepwater funded the effort, but also controlled the process. So even though a monitoring mitigation effort took place, monitoring and baseline studies that were done were not peer-reviewed. There were no independently published articles, and the sampling size was too small to show any real value to the science or show any positive or negative effects. Mitigation lasted for only 6 months, though Rhode Island fishermen have still incurred losses for months afterward and to this date. The long-term effects of the Block Island Wind Farm upon stocks and migrations are still unknown, and there were no long-term mitigation compensation plans set up. We believe that was done by design and do not wish to see Deepwater do the same to the town of East Hampton's fishermen. Our fishermen deserve an open and transparent process that can only occur with the FAC being the lead for this. Not Deepwater, not CCE, and certainly not a process led by a contractual agreement by Deepwater to hire CCE for specific deliverables that may not represent the needs of the town of East Hampton's fishermen as it relates to the South Fork Wind Farm. The town needs to require Deepwater to accept independent third-party negotiation and pay for and agree to the fish comp before they are allowed access to Beach Lane for the South Fork Wind Farm. Without a negotiated agreement with Deepwater and the town's fishermen via the FAC in advance of allowing access, there will be no way to hold the South Fork Wind Farm and Deepwater accountable. The fact that Deepwater refuses to agree to mitigate in advance of access approval perhaps heralds the fact that their overall intentions are neither honorable nor neighborly. The FAC also rejects the community benefits package creation of an ocean industry sustainability program with an oversight board. We believe it is being used as a Trojan horse by Deepwater to wrestle the ultimate control of a fish comp away from the FAC to the detriment of the town of East Hampton's fishermen and their communities. Sincerely, the members of the East Hampton Town Fisheries Advisory Committee. I think that pretty much gets the point across. We will make sure that all of those documents, that if we haven't already sent them to all of you, that we do. And any other information before the deadline is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Okay, last call.
Hello. My name is Elizabeth Halliday. I'm Amagansett, and I'm actually in support of Deepwater Wind. This is definitely a tough room to speak in, but considering the alternatives, if steps aren't made to transition off of fossil fuels, I think the consequences would be more severe. So even if there are some problems with Deepwater Wind, I believe that the project should be approved. Offshore wind is not new. On other places where this technology has been implemented for decades, research shows that offshore wind and nature can coexist. Transitioning away from fossil fuels is critical to our marine environment, and offshore wind is a fantastic option that can provide renewable energy at the scale that is needed. Perhaps not 100% energy supply for this region or other regions, but it is a step in the right direction. The offshore wind will advance regardless of this board's decision, so I would support landing at Beach Lane. I believe it's the shortest to the existing substation and would be the least disruptive. I also am in support of requiring Deepwater Wind to provide comparative studies to the environmental impact and health impacts on the neighborhood where transmission or onshore infrastructure exists, and if I would also require Deepwater to provide greater transparency on pricing for end users. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Steve Gallagher. I just want to thank everybody that spoke tonight. It was very informative, and I think the town's going about this in the wrong way. If they really wanted some control over any project to produce green energy, I think that they could use some of the old town dumps. They could put wind, they could put solar, they could partner with LIPA. They're worried about $8 million. Well, you know, that's just going to be tacked on your electric bill. Anyway, they could rent those sites to the utility company, and that would mitigate the difference, right? Instead of getting $8 million, they could rent it for, say, you know, $100,000 a year. And they might want to get more than one type of green energy involved. There's a lot of days when it's hot, the sun's shining, the wind's not blowing, right? This project, there's just too many questions. It's going to be too expensive. And in light of what several gentlemen said tonight, we're just going to feed the rest of the island. We were talking about having East Hampton having 100% renewable, not all of New York. Really what it comes down to is this is Cuomo's political wet dream. He'll get all the campaign contributions he wants until he dies, along with everybody else that supports it. That's all I really have to say. But I really think the town should look at having more control over what's being built and where the electricity's going. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Manning?
Good evening, Manny Villar. I'm in the governmental affairs business. I represent the state police union. I'm also a conservationist, which works hand in hand with the union that I represent, which is the state environmental conservation officers, state forest rangers, and state park police are all members of the police union that I represent. In the governmental affairs field, and I'm not here in my official capacity, I'm here as a resident of East Hampton town. In my capacity in governmental affairs, I deal within the state budget, work with legislation dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars. There is and I'm not going to speak tonight to the technical data because there's clearly a lot of people here that are much more in tune with the technical component of it as well as the financial components of it. What I want to speak to you about is the political aspect here. If you don't feel like you're a political pawn, you should, all right? There clearly is a much bigger political picture here, and that's the world in which I deal in and I work in. There is a huge, colossal push to close Indian Point nuclear power plant in the Hudson Valley. It's a big push by New York City, by a lot of voters that far surpass all the votes in East Hampton 100 times over. To close that power plant, the state of New York has to come up with an equal amount of energy. That energy has to come from somewhere. Although the cause for renewable energy and to try and mitigate climate change is truly an honorable and valid cause, this is not being proposed for that purpose. This is being proposed on a political level to sue the governor who has further political aspirations and to fulfill votes in the Hudson Valley in New York, in the New York City area. That's clearly on a political level where this is going. And it's being financially pushed by D.E. Shaw Financial, Citibank, GE Financial, that will make billions of dollars, not millions, not hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. Again, these are all numbers and votes that far surpass us in our little hamlet. They really do. So I would really urge you, don't be a political pawn. Please listen to all the people that are very, very knowledgeable, that have all the technical data, that are providing the data. Listen to the conservationists. This is a conservation moment. This is about conservation. It's not environmental ideology. It's about conservation. And there's a big difference between environmentalism and conservationism. The Audubon Society deals, absolutely abhors windmills. It kills thousands of birds. Each windmill kills hundreds of birds a year. Thousands of birds are being killed every year by these windmills. There's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of good reasons for renewable energy if it's done properly in the right place at the right time. This is just not it. It's just really not it. Let's get all the data and let's get all the information, but don't succumb to the pressures of a political picture that's being painted by people that need political expediency to further their careers. That would be my advice. And like I said, I'm in Albany every week. That's what I do for a living. That's where I'm at, All right, that's my advice. Thank you.
Thanks, Manny.
Thanks, Manny.
Okay, is that it? Okay, thank you, everybody. We're going to move on to new business. Acrobatic Creek, application of Haver, Phragmite Control at 155 Isle of Wight Road, East Hampton. Has anybody had a chance to look at that yet?
Should we not do a roll call since like half the people are here? Is it too late to do that? I mean, it should be on record that we have 5 members of a 9-member board.
We had 6. We should have done a roll call.
Okay, I just thought,
skipped it. If you guys,
if we can at least just make note of who's here and who isn't, and
okay.
I think it would be.
Can you do a roll call, please?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if the woman wanted to speak again.
I'm sorry. Sure. If you send it to us in writing, it'll be entered as part of the record.
The German issue quite different.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you want me to do roll call?
Yes, please.
Francis Bach,
Here.
Rick Drew,
Here.
Susan Vorpal,
Here.
John Aldred,
Here.
Del Cullum,
Present.
Bill Taylor, Jim Grimes.
Please
Left
make a
at
note that Jim was
7:39.
here.
Jim had to leave early, and Brian Burns.
Absent.
Okay.
Susan
Susan
McGraw.
Keeber.
And Susan McGraw-Keeber.
Absent.
Absent. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so back on the application of Haber. Has any-
That was one that we had originally looked at when we looked at Bay Inlet and the Lions Head Beach Association, and
Yep.
the other one, Isle of Wight. It's in that same neighborhood, same neighbors.
Is this that have to do with that pond that's down there?
That's
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's one initially that Bruce had brought to our attention, but he was still in the process of getting all the permits together and all the information.
Okay, so shall we table it?
Make a motion to table?
Yeah, we could table.
Table it.
Have a second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Yeah, and I know he said he wasn't able to make it tonight.
Table.
Table.
Okay, beaches. ZBA public hearing notice, application of Lauder, 118 Beach Lane, a new residence and sanitary system.
I've only just glanced over some of the paperwork that's been emailed to me. I don't know if Jim's been and has done any more research on it, but I don't think I've had enough to really make any decisions here.
When is the
This
hearing?
was on the ZBA agenda at their last meeting, and
They made a motion to keep it open for a month,
a
right?
month.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure when the meeting was, but the ZBA's
I might have your text.
hearing notice was going to be kept open for a month from their last meeting.
From this past last meeting?
The ZBA's past last meeting.
The
could probably
11th, I
find
think it was?
I'll have it.
But at any rate, this is Ronald Lauder's house between Wainscott Pond and the beach that got washed away in Sandy.
Oh, okay.
It's an application to rebuild it.
Okay.
And,
In a different area, in a different spot, not exact, I think, right?
well, maybe,
More-
but
more-
there's,
more easterly?
there's hardly any room to work with.
Exactly.
Between the pond and the beach. So, we're neighbors on both sides of this thing, and likely to be the most impacted neighbors by this project.
And I think there was some issue with the possible destruction of the dune there.
Is there,
In the
is
placement
there
of the
time and opportunity for me to do a little more research? Or, John, are you saying that you've really pretty much...
Well, I'm not sure of the dates, but if we, I guess, have to weigh in to the ZBA before their record closes.
Wasn't it the day after our last meeting? I think it was
They were leaving it open.
right, but that would have been 2 weeks, actually more than 2 weeks ago at this point.
It's getting close. You might want to check on the status of it with the zoning board.
Okay.
And then
I can find out.
we have a meeting in
date.
just about a week, so hopefully we could bring some information back to us for the next meeting.
Yeah,
Still get a letter off.
I'll definitely put some time and effort into looking at it.
Well, hold on for a minute. Let me try to find the
Okay.
date, because I can find it if I have a minute. You want to go on to something else and come back? Here it is. May 21st was the ZBA hearing. So that'd be June 21st. All right, so we'll have another
Give a little
meeting
time.
before
Okay.
that.
I will...
Should be.
And in terms of the dune, you said, Susan, I think what happened was, after Sandy, they cleaned up the remains of the house, and I think they rebuilt or, piled up some sand on the ocean side. So it's an artificial dune, and it's, a small hill, basically. That's still intact from when they rebuilt it, but it's really not much of a dune. It's
Okay.
kind of more a man-made
not.
berm.
Well, previous to that house
It's not a
falling in.
barrier dune anymore.
There's no plantings in it
Yeah,
or anything? It's just a pile of sand, or...
I-
There might be
I'm
some
not sure.
vegetation
Okay,
there,
there might be some
but
beach grass.
It's in no way any kind of substantial dune as it was.
They spent 2 to 3 years protecting that house with sand cubes, these big, massive
Right.
cubes.
Right. And,
So much for that.
my understanding from the discussion at the ZBA was that this is really, they can't go anywhere else with this. They're kind of locked into the plan they have,
Small footprint.
small footprint. I mean, it seems to me that the decision
Or envelope.
we need to make is whether we're going to support, oppose this, or say nothing about it.
What type of septic system are they proposing? That might be an interesting discussion.
I think
Well, I think they have to go with the new at this
New
point.
one. Would it be above ground? Would it,
New construction.
That's, I think, a key point in terms of the health of the pond.
Well, that's what they're looking, one of the things that they're looking for is a variance to install the sanitary system 73 feet from wetlands where a 200-foot setback is required.
Okay. All right, a little homework would probably help us.
Yeah, great. Another puzzle.
All right,
Well, you can speak to Brian Frank, he was the planner on the,
Brian's the lead. Okay.
Okay, Napeag, application for Victor D'Amico Institute. Napeag Meadow, reconstruct existing bulkhead and raise the height of the bulkhead by 18 inches. I know Jim has been in touch with them, so,
Do they have an agent for that one?
First Coastal.
First Coastal?
First Coastal. And with this, I'd like to bring up, I've spoken, I myself have spoken to Christopher Cohen before this application in regards to the
Oh, this
access
is, yeah, okay.
to Napeag Harbor, where it's been
Where he's chained it off.
It's been chained off, there's signs posted. He has admitted that he did do that, reasoning because of the bulkhead being in such disrepair. He's afraid somebody's going to go down there and get hurt. And they were having some problems with vandalism. And I said, well, that's not any reason to close that off to the public. You know, if you have vandalism issues, get a hold of the police, file a police report. You know, bulkhead, cordon off the bulkhead, rope it off, put signs up, you know, do not enter, no trespassing. So you know, we need to work with him in regards to that public access as well, and maybe we can work with him at the same time with this application.
Should we invite Chris or his agent in maybe to the next meeting and have a conversation
Yeah,
with
I
him?
think that would be a good idea.
Let's try to do that.
Hart.
now he must have possession of an easement from the state, since that's a state road.
It's all state property.
Right.
And basically, the deeds and state that the Harrison assigns the right and privilege and easement to use in common with the party of the first part, its successors and assigns, which would be the state now, as a private roadway for all purposes of ingress and egress to and from premises now owned by the respective parties.
Says nothing about public access?
well, if it's
So-
the state, I would think that would assume public.
Well, state
You
is
would
public
assume.
as
They're
well.
they're one of the assigns.
Right,
Yeah.
The D'Amico studio, the house that's next door,
the property next door.
and the state. So it should be a shared road, I
And
think,
it-
for the
Right.
public, for the D'Amico
Right.
studio, and
Yeah.
the other residents.
It
that live
always
there.
has been,
It
so
always-
I think we can work something out.
Yeah, see if we
it
get
always
Chris to
has
move
been.
his chain that protects the art barge from vandalism or unwanted visitors.
Yeah.
On the edge of his property.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think we should invite him in. I think we can work something out.
Yeah,
Chris is
you know,
doing a good job.
I'm sure he, you know, I think he's more willing to work something out with it, but that was his concerns.
Sure.
And the
That
reasoning
makes
for
sense.
doing that,
Sure.
which,
And I have the file as well, and I know Susan asked me to kind of look at this a little bit as well. I have not really reviewed the deed and any of the paperwork yet, but I'm happy to step in where needed and take a more active role as well. So Susan, I will definitely do that as much as I needed over the next couple
Yeah.
weeks. So
Yeah,
if we
maybe-
get them in, great. Maybe I could be a part of the
If Chris is
conversation.
going to join us next meeting, perhaps it'd be good to take a look by that time.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
All right. Okay, letter from Susan Stadler to lease house on lot 29S at Lazy Point.
Just, it's my wife's application,
Right.
so I'm going to recuse myself from this one.
And
Susan, what was
because of
his
that,
name?
we
Chris
don't
what?
have,
Don't have a quorum? Okay.
um,
We'll table that maybe till the next meeting.
yeah, can that,
Cone?
Can we
If you're
table
okay,
it?
if you're okay with it.
I don't think we, does anybody have a problem with their lease continuing until we can get a quorum to vote on it?
Maybe.
I think we're fine.
Okay, thank you, Francis.
All right, old business. I want to continue that discussion on the special events permits. Again, there's not a quorum here. Well, there is a quorum, but there's not enough people to really have that conversation.
Yeah, it's probably something we should vet out with the whole group. I think that's fair to everyone.
I agree.
How about a smaller committee review what the process is now, and then bring it back
Yeah, the
to the
beaches,
full board.
the beaches committee would probably make sense, because most of the special permits deal with the beaches.
Thanks.
If that made sense, for
Well, these are
instance.
gathering permits and not special, yeah. No, it makes sense to me.
Right,
the beaches
so,
committee wanna
so
take the
is
lead
it,
on that?
is the village and the town separate in this
The
matter?
village does not issue gathering permits, believe it or not.
So there's no permit process for people to have,
We have one caterer who's been coming to us when he has an event on the village beaches. He's been coming directly to us. Anybody else, we don't have a clue,
right,
because,
is that something we need to?
well, the village doesn't issue permits for that.
Oh, I see, sure, so,
But can we? I mean, if we own the
We own the
beach in the
beach.
village,
Yeah, we own the beach.
And we
But
have a-
unless we know about the
how do we
event.
assign responsibility to those
can we make a
people
request
if
of the
there's
village?
no-
See, that's why this works so well, is because we're a part of the process of the town's gathering permits. Okay? The village doesn't have gathering permits,
Has there ever been a discussion with the village about this issue?
not that I'm aware of.
Seems as though that should take place.
You know, last year, we did,
There should be some sort of accountability. I mean, why again, the beaches are the beaches, all right? I know the village likes to say in their propaganda, in their pamphlets, village beaches, but these are trustee beaches. These are the public's beaches, and there shouldn't be an invisible line when it comes to a variety of things. Permits, events being held on the beaches and holding people accountable.
but I think we have to figure out a way to make the village residents aware that they're supposed to come to us. Because if the village isn't doing it for themselves,
Right,
we can't expect them to do it for us.
sure.
Well, I think we can work on that.
Yeah, I
I mean,
guess,
we could put ads in the paper.
Yeah, we
Right.
do a
So this is a
promotional campaign.
50-person limit? Is that what, this is a mass gathering?
It's a mass
If it's
gathering.
catered, it doesn't matter how many people.
But private, it's 50-person limit?
I think it's 50, yeah.
Yeah, it's 50. It's 50.
So what does the village do if more than 50 people are going to gather on? They just
I don't think they-
don't worry about it?
I don't know.
There's been cases that I've come across where there hasn't been any concern. I mean,
Sure, they
I've
have
seen
gathering permits for anything.
large events with tables, chairs, silverware left on the beaches overnight,
Right.
okay, and cleaned up when they come back in the morning at their leisure, and it shouldn't be like that. There's got to be some things set in place so that we don't have to worry
Well, we
about
want to get together with them and discuss.
Yeah, we should,
that. So-
absolutely.
So let's, I mean, I thought I would hear from you between the last meeting and now, and to try to, work on that. If we can figure out a date that
Okay.
you're available to do it, I'm more than happy to reach out to Becky, see what we can put together.
Okay.
And can also be a part of the discussion. I mean, they may be happy to, get a few dollars for
Sure.
certain permits.
Sure.
I don't know.
Sure. Again, I'm not concerned about money, and I'm concerned about
Well, we don't get
protection
money.
of our beaches.
We get no money
Right.
for these permits.
Right. But I mean, it's the way the beaches are used and abused how I'm concerned.
Well, and that's what we get, We require them to clean up afterwards.
Right.
And they sign paperwork to that
Right.
effect. So,
Okay.
and that's lacking in the village.
I think it's worth taking that first step to approach the village.
Yeah, I do too.
see
And
what
I
it
think
is.
while we're at it, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, I'm just throwing this out there, but I think as well as the garbage that I'm going to just touch on again tonight, issue with the cans in the village, maybe we can talk about that all together at the same time, so we don't have to
Well,
keep
that's what I
inviting.
meant.
Yeah, is that what you meant?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right, yeah, I agree. I would like to get together with whoever needs to get together with us to discuss that type of stuff. I think it's high time, and we're getting too close to getting already into the season. If there's going to be a delay process, I'd hate to have to say, well, we'll see it in effect next year. I think we need to get on this. It's just, from my perspective anyway, on the garbage end, but this is really, part of it. It's part of it.
Right,
hand in
oh,
hand.
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm always available.
Okay.
I'll accommodate everyone else, put it that way. That's the least I can do. So if we can put together in it any other way, just let me know with enough, just a few days advance time, I'll accommodate.
Well, we should have one more person. Anybody?
Jim is on the beaches. He's usually interested in participating. If Jim can't do it, I'll be his backup.
Okay.
Yeah, or I could
Or
be
Susan.
available. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
From my end, I think I was asked just to kind of review the actual permit application from the last meeting, and I did, and I think it's pretty good. You know, it's not overly burdensome. It's pretty straightforward. The hardest part is probably the expensive part, which is getting the liability insurance, but I don't think we're asking too much of these people to be able to get the permits from the trustees. It's just a matter of getting them over to the trustees to do it. So I liked the application. I thought it was pretty straightforward.
Is that our application? Or
Yeah, filing instructions for trustee consent for public assembly.
Right.
Yeah, I've used it before, and it was intimidating to look at, especially when you get to the insurance angle.
Yeah.
But if I was able to do it, anybody could really pull it off.
All garbage will be removed and debris promptly.
There is issues, though. You know, you start using tents. You have to have a fire marshal come down and inspect that to make sure that there's no dangers involved. And this includes on the beach because, you know, if a tent catches on fire on the beach and people are trapped in it and they die, then it's going to be a problem.
There are no tents allowed.
Is there a separate beach party permit application you have for this one?
I've pulled off many tents off the beach and put them in my truck.
I feel this is burdensome.
That were left there.
Because they're doing the same exact thing for the town. The trustees are represented on a committee that vets all of these applications, and then we require them to come down here and do it again for us. And they have to do the insurance thing again, so they're doing that twice. I just don't understand why.
But let me
we
ask,
need to do it
Francis,
that way.
why aren't we dealing with that? And why is the town? If it's trustee beaches, is this falling into their laps? Why can't we have that control of issuing these permits and inspecting, which is a big part, which is going to be a big part as far as I'm concerned, that's been lacking, and which could make this a lot more
Because we don't have
effective.
enforcement powers, and the enforcement powers are used by the town for all of these events.
No, I mean, for enforcement for what?
Well, if
somebody does leave a mess?
The town is down, they're down there and they're looking, and when there's a party, they go and they check all the paperwork, make sure they have their permits in place and all that sort of thing. If they don't, then they enforce that.
Right.
We can't do that. We can't go down there and shut down a party.
No, but can we not have a permit filled out except, have part of that permit, I believe, I don't know if the town does it or not, but get a deposit for the cleanup. And if there is anything that was left not the way it was when the event started, then there's no enforcement. They just don't get their deposit back unless they clean up the mess properly. And
it's about more than a mess. It's about footprint that they use.
True.
It's about how they lay it out.
Yeah, I understand. But we can't not have it be. I don't think we should let it just go willy-nilly and. However the footprint or the cleanup is at the end, there's no recourse if it's not done properly.
It clearly needs to be thought through a little more. I think the deposit thing's tricky as well, because now you're kind of incentivizing, hey, I'm some rich guy and I'll put the $500 down and take a walk after the party, you know? So it needs to be thought through a little bit, and I think the idea of meeting with the appropriate people at the town or village is the right way to go about it and work it out. But
we really need discussion with this.
Look, the town isn't asking for this. I'm the one who's asking for this.
Right.
I just think it's an undue burden on the same people who would.
How many of these do you vet out per year?
Yeah, to what?
Average.
To do it twice, right? Is that what you're saying? To have to do it twice, it's a burden? Well, I agree.
And there's a cost factor because they have to pay for that insurance.
Right.
There's no reason why the insurance policy can't be done in one shot.
There's
town and the
efficiencies
trustees.
here, but I think we want to maintain a position of oversight as well.
Well, that's what I mean.
It's our beaches.
It's our
It should
beaches.
be our authority.
But
Right,
we're there.
Under our
right.
authority.
But we're there at the,
We are represented.
yes.
Yeah, our interests are
Not if
being
we're going to give up our
protected.
authority on
How are
the
we giving
permitting
up our
process.
authority?
Well, we're not giving up our authority. We're represented. I mean, if Francis says no,
Well, if it's a joint form, I think there's ways to work efficiency without giving up authority. That would be the direction I would encourage us to
The
go.
way it works on this committee is if I say no on any beach permit, it doesn't happen.
Right.
But we also get a vote on all the other events in town.
so our authority.
I'm for
is
starting the
protected.
discussion. I'd like to see
Yeah,
where we can
okay,
go with it.
okay.
Okay. So I'll contact the village and put together a meeting with them.
Okay.
And we will discuss as a committee how how these other permits go into effect now and how we can possibly improve it.
Okay.
Okay? All right, committee reports. Acrobatic Hog Creek. We have a ZBA public hearing notice application of Rosenwald at 100 Runnymede Drive, Coastal Stairway.
Yeah, I think that was, the ZBA had tabled that till
Was that the
the end
Peter
of
Joyce?
June, right, June 26th or... End of June.
Who do we have from Aquaculture here? Susan, is that you? Are you on Aquaculture?
Me and Susan.
Susan
Susan
King.
had originally gone to that
Right.
first ZBA hearing. I wasn't able to attend. And she had said that it was tabled till, I think it was June 26th. So one of us will try and make that meeting to find out exactly when it is. I mean, oh, yeah, June 26th is postponed.
Okay. Connolly Bulkhead at 217 Kings Point Road, notice of completion, approved revegetation plan received from the town, closeout permit.
That was where we had, we had looked at the bulkhead that had been done. We had approved that. Jimmy had some concerns about the revegetation. And they had put in the revegetation plan. I don't know if we should wait until, I mean, we're approving the bulkhead. Jimmy had some issue with the revegetation. I don't know if we want to wait until that's completed and go back and inspect before we close out our permit.
It might be appropriate, you know, the re-veg is a key component of this being successful, and if it's not done with the right plantings or the right
Which I
methodology.
think originally that was the case.
That was the case.
So we might want to wait and
Play one more
go
site
back
visit.
and re-inspect when it's done and make sure it's done to our satisfaction.
Okay.
Is Jim on that committee?
No.
No, okay. Torrendale, care of Peter Joyce, 285 Kings Point Road, bulkhead and stairway repair. Application fee to be refunded, request of closeout permit.
Yeah.
Can you, yeah,
He made a mistake. He put in an application, but he really just wanted to close out the permit. And then on further, when Susan Keeper found out that everything was done perfectly and said, why is he applying to do something, I went back into the file and found out that it had been approved by Diane McNally, had made a motion, and Tyler had seconded it in May 2017. So it was in fact closed out. So Susan Vorpal, I believe, wants to make a motion to refund the $100 application fee because
she's going to have to come and do that.
Yeah.
Susan?
Susan Keeper or Susan Vorpal?
Oh, Susan Vorpal,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I
to
thought you
refund
meant
him his
Susan
application
Keeper.
permit that he paid $100.
You reviewed the paperwork?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
and I spoke with Mr. Joyce myself.
Okay, great.
Are you making a motion now, Susan?
Yes, I'll make a motion to.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who seconded it? I'm sorry. Thank you.
ZBA hearing of 6/19/18, Maslin of 307 Kings Point Road, stone armor revetment.
That was, again,
Well, it hasn't occurred yet, it's June
Yeah.
19th.
yeah, that was postponed. That was another ZBA hearing that had been postponed till a later date.
Okay. Move on to aquaculture, aquaponic harbor mosquito larvae survey.
Okay, we're going to meet on Monday, June 11th for a training session. Susan, myself, and Mike Delalio of the Planning Department will be the three representatives from the trustees in the town that lead the groups onto the marsh. Nicole Mayer of the Nature Conservancy, Tom Iwaneko of Vector Control will be the project coordinators, and Matt Grasso of the Nature Conservancy will also sort of oversee from the Nature Conservancy's standpoint. We have 5 samplers chosen, and so between the 3 of us and the 5, we should have enough to cover 2 to 3 person crews that go out on the marsh. So Susan and myself and Mike met with the Nature Conservancy to get trained in the use of the GPSs and how that data was coordinated on the data transfer sheets. We did that last week, and we'll probably, the June 11th meeting will probably be mainly just a training, how to dip, coordinate where we're going to go, what our access points will be, where to look for hot spots on the marsh, things like that. And we probably won't begin, a regular survey schedule until June 18th. And then that'll last through the middle of August. So that's the status of that.
Thank you, John.
And oyster pond, oyster transfer?
Pictures.
Okay.
Very encouraging, I'm afraid. So Barley and I went out there Tuesday. Pond level was very high. The salinity was very low, fresh on the surface. And we did 11 tows, approximately 2 minutes each, with a scallop dredge to look for the oysters. There's a picture of the pond. You can see how high it is into the woods. I've been there sort of on and off all winter, waiting for it to let. But there seems to be sort of a rocky dam over where the beach usually lets out, so it's preventing the pond from actually breaking through. So the pond's kind of been dribbling out over time, and it doesn't look like it's going to let until there's quite a storm that forces it to. Another picture, this is where we launched. See how high it is again. These are the tows. The red lines are approximate places that we did the tows. The yellow line is a rocky ridge that runs out from this peninsula on the south side of the pond. In the past, when these transplants have been done, most of the oystering, most of the harvesting was done around this rocky ridge. It's kind of deeper and muddier out in the periphery, not that many oysters out there. That's a typical, let me just make sure I didn't skip anything. That's the tow from the last, that's the catch from the last tow, which was one of our better tows. As you maybe can see, most of the oysters in there are dead. That's some close-up of that tow, mostly dead shell. These are the tows by number, and this is these are the results by number. So you can see not many live, a lot of dead. some in the process of dying, so things aren't looking good for the oyster population there. So the totals, 61 alive, 634 dead. So it's 8.8% survival, or 8.8% live. But a lot of that shell is very old, so it may have been there for a while. So we kind of estimated, we didn't actually do counts, but we estimated that if we took, recently dead shell compared to live, the survival would be more like about 20%. So that's what we found. I think we have to decide if it's worth trying to do an oyster transplant with probably at best 1 in 5 oysters being alive, being found alive and in very bad shape since the pond is so fresh.
John, do you think it would help if the state did a seasonal letting there to get more salinity into the pond and a little better water exchange?
Well, I would say that, the state may have an interest in letting nature take its course.
Right.
And there's probably something to be said for that. But there may be some monitoring that could be done, and if the pond really goes to a point in low salinity, at that point, rather than do regular lettings, they might, that might be helpful.
Yeah.
When it's closed, how does it fill back up? Are they springs there, or is it mainly rainwater?
Well, I guess groundwater does infiltrate into there, but I think it's mostly, rainwater that fills it up. It's kind of like Georgica.
Yeah, well, there's springs going into Georgica.
Yeah, I'm
also.
sure there's springs coming into any coastal pond. It's kind of down into the groundwater.
Did you get a gauge on temperature at all versus what it usually is? I just know a lot of the bay and ocean water is a little colder up until last week than typical over the years. Could that have an effect on coming up out of the mud or anything?
I don't think so. I mean, the water seemed about, normal for this time of year, comparable to what the harbors would be. I don't think that's a significant factor. It's really the salinity.
Right.
They can take down to fairly low salinity, but this is kind of extreme, and it looks like it's been this way for a while.
Yeah.
So, and they've just come out of their winter hibernation, if you will, so they're starting to feed heavily. Typically, shellfish do have a period in the spring when they do come out of the winter, they start feed, and they've used up a lot of their reserves. And that's a time when a lot of shellfish die, especially small shellfish seed. So it's not a good time for them to start metabolizing and, metabolizing in fresh water. So I think that's why we're seeing, found some animals in the process of dying. And had we opened some of the shell that we called live, we probably would have found, a lot of other oysters in pretty bad shape.
So they are coming up out of the mud this time of year?
No, they don't come up out. They're just sitting on the bottom.
They're always just sitting.
They're always just sitting.
Has the state seen that?
I sent Tom Dess that PowerPoint today.
Oh, okay.
He hasn't commented.
All right, beaches, trash cans.
Yeah, well, as we discussed, we'll discuss this with the village. My intention is again, just to get these cans off the beach. Put them anywhere but not the beach. They're trash receptacles. Put them halfway from the parking lot to the water. Now they're a trash and litter source. Doesn't belong on the beach. I don't care who it benefits. There's no reason for it. And again, as the town is trying to move closer, I know the litter committee is doing some experimental pilot, putting up signs for carry in, carry out at a couple locations right now. I think it's a real mixed message. We're promoting carry in, carry out on certain beaches. Other beaches, we have this normal, where the trash cans are at the beach heads on the parking lots. And then we have trash cans that are on the beaches. I think it's a conflict of a solution. I've been fighting for this for a long time. I just don't. I know I can convince you all that the garbage cans don't belong there. I've got a slideshow that'll, turn your stomach. I keep bringing it with me to show it to you. I don't think, again, I'm going to take advantage of the loose committee we have tonight and maybe getting out of here at a reasonable time. But when we do have a full group, and if we do meet with the village, I'd like to go over these slides. I mean, I've been documenting this with video and photographs for 8 years. What I'm talking about is real, and we can solve the problem. And it's not a big deal, I don't think, to have to walk just a little bit farther up to dump your trash in a trash receptacle, or take the damn stuff home with you. We don't want it anyway. It's your trash. Take it home with you. I look forward to meeting with the village and trying to rectify this situation calmly. I will absolutely give that another effort. And I will dance with them one more time. But I really hope that we can come to some sort of an agreement on that. This trash issue is just getting so crazy. It's just a shame that we're still dealing with it, but we are.
Are there any other beaches on the island that put their cans on the beach?
Not on the sand.
Yeah.
No, not on the sand. And I know that Southampton has just introduced some of these new garbage cans to alleviate some of the problems of people throwing stuff in them that don't belong in them. There's a lot of things being done for this trash issue on the beach, as well as all the volunteerships that keep growing and growing for people that are concerned about it and going out there and picking up the trash, not only on the beaches but on the roadsides. But overall, trash is a problem, and it can be corrected. It shouldn't continue.
Well, I even read this week, Riverhead, I think in Riverhead and a couple of their beaches, they're installing trash cans, well, that have Wi-Fi on them for people.
Yes.
But they're also going to have a signal, some kind of signal system
tells
in
when
them
they're full.
that tells the sanitation, alerts the sanitation department when they're full.
Yeah. Everything's so high tech.
I don't think they've
there really is some amazing things out there. But really, common sense just tells you, you don't put a garbage can. Look, I'm not putting down the folks that are emptying these cans, which, by the way, it's a lot of work. And I know the town has got a whole new schedule working for these guys this summer, where they're literally going to be out there, I think, 24 hours emptying these cans. And I really hope the town's going to pay these guys a little extra cash for doing this, because it's not easy work. I mean, these cans are full, they're heavy, and you don't just lift them up and throw them in a truck. I think correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know all the particulars, but I think somebody told me one route is 51 cans, and that's just one route, meaning there's more than one route. I believe that's in Montauk. 51 cans these guys are emptying.
Probably right on Main Street.
Yeah, and it's tough work, but there's a need for it. We used to not have to dump them overnight. We used to be able to get off at 5 o'clock and come back at 5 in the morning. But it's not like that anymore. Things have changed, and we can't let the burden fall on our beautiful beaches. And I'm glad the town has made this change, and I hope it works, because I know that the Parks and Rec Department are really have stepped it up to a point where I see a big difference, and I know the summer just makes this a whole new story, and I hope they can keep up with it, and I hope the town supports them in any way they need. And they need to compensate these guys. It's hard work. It's tough. I hope nobody gets hurt out there too. But hopefully we can all come to some sort of a solution to this garbage once and for all, and get a great management plan in place so we don't have to talk and discuss about the filth all the time. It's just a shame.
I would just suggest that if when you do meet with the village and discuss this, if there's a lot of resistance on the part of the village, that maybe a suggestion could be made to do a study, like a side-by-side comparison. I'm sure there's, a small beach that could be set aside to try this and look at it against a comparably sized beach. And then if that demonstrates that what you're
Well, the town used to
advocating.
do it. The town used to put them on the beach.
Yeah.
And then they found that it was better off not having them on the beach.
I was on the Nature Preserve Committee early on, and George Larson from the state park was chairman, and he told the story of the state parks had the same experience. They had trash cans on the beach. They took them off and found it was a lot less trouble.
Yeah.
Less garbage, less trouble.
Again, I'm not trying to offend the guys that are doing the work. I'm not saying they're not doing a good job or they're not doing a complete job. That's not the case. My complaint is against the trash and the filth. Right. It's there. It doesn't matter, how hard we work. If it's still there, there's more to be done. And I think that's the case. And I know, if I've upset a few people, like, for example, Mr. McDonald there over at Main Beach, because I say Main Beach is filthy. How dare I say that? He manages it. I understand why he would get upset, but he doesn't understand. I'm not attacking him. I'm telling the truth. When I'm there taking pictures in the summertime when the sun rises a lot earlier than people get up, but me, I'm there, it's a mess. And when you folks when Mr. McDonald gets there and the lifeguards get there, people have already started cleaning up some of that mess, or not, and the lifeguards, their first duty, the lifeguards, when they get on the beach, is to clean up the beach for the patrons of the beach. John Ryan Jr. has told me that over and over again, and I think that's an awesome way for these guys to start the day. I mean, it's certainly not his burden, but to have installed that into these young junior lifeguards and the adult lifeguards, I think that's fantastic. But why should he have to? And that's why, because it's there every time they start their day. So it would be nice to be able to solve that issue. And I hope we can do that without offending anybody. Anyway.
Okay. Can we move on to Adopt the Beach?
Yes, quickly. I redid it the way I discussed it with you, basically eliminating all the plaques and awards for doing the job. I added on about 20 hours of work required. It's a good trade back. But now, look, please look through it. I'd like to get this thing in motion. Tyler put a lot of work into it. It's a decent program. I mean, it's good to have it there for people who are interested in it. It'll be much more efficient now, rather than requiring someone who signs up for it to do 5 hours of cleanup a year, which really is nothing. To do 26, which is really just a reasonable amount of work. It's not a lot. It might sound a lot. But if you look at how I had it scheduled on here, it's once a week during the summer months when it's the peak garbage and litter time on our beaches. And then the slower months, I knocked it down to once a month. And then there's 3 months out of the winter, which really isn't usually a high volume of trash. And also we usually have snow on the ground. So when it comes down to it, 26 times a year is a real job worth saying thank you for the people that are doing it. And I think it'll have an effect. A positive effect.
What's the extent of, what does a beach represent? I mean, are there like from here to here? Is there distance demarcated?
From my understanding, it would be that. It would be from the beachhead. When people enter a beach, any beach, Napeek Beach, Atlantic Avenue, Indian Wells, pick a beach. I don't know how many people have even signed up for this, so I don't know how many people are already covered.
One.
Yeah.
So far signed up right
I mean,
And they're at Nappy Beach. So,
have we designated, like, okay, you start at the middle of the beach and it's 300 yards this way,
You know,
300 yards that way? or
no,
whatever?
no.
We talked about that a little bit with Tyler, but we never got to a
Yeah.
defined parameter.
That's funny, I didn't think about that, it was never brought to my attention. However, thinking about it now, there really doesn't need to be that measurement on a beach. You get out there, you start picking up your trash, and you find yourself going until your bag is full, or you've done a large area, or you feel like you've accomplished something. Certainly, nobody's going to go out there and pick up trash for 5 minutes and say, well, I've done my job. If that were the case, well, that's where some of the other rules fall in place, where the trustees, keep up with what people are doing. You don't just give this, you don't just allow somebody to adopt a beach and then say, it's all yours. There'll be some follow-up. And I think that was put in here for a good reason.
Has anyone had a chance to look through this?
I just sent it out yesterday.
Right.
I read through
when
it
you got
quickly.
Yeah.
I read through it, but,
If we take time to, if we want to take another meeting to go through it and read it, and maybe if there's changes, have to do it again, that's fine. Hey, some of you may not want to do it at all. I'm not going to really fight with you about that angle or argue that.
I think it's a good program.
Yeah, I think so too. I was a little curious at first, but I think as long as we're not doing it to promote advertising for the person who's doing it, rather than the purpose of cleaning up the beach, I feel it's a lot more of a program.
Right.
And that's where it stands now, and I think that's good.
It seems pretty practical.
Yeah.
All right. Move on to education. Neither of our people are here tonight.
We'll skip it. Brian has a report next meeting.
Okay. Georgica Ponds, Flocken at 17 Georgica Association Road, bulkhead and dock repair.
I think Jim has it. I don't have that in my file tonight, so I don't have any paperwork on that one.
Well, this was only filed on the 29th.
Okay.
Came in on the 29th of May, so we can table that.
Okay.
Casson at Briar Patch Road, revised area of
Yeah,
Right,
Casson,
mighty
they've, seems like they've gotten their DEC permit in place, and they did submit a copy of a revised survey. It's a little unclear, it's almost like it's a partial survey, so I may just call their office to make sure we have a complete copy of the survey. And so I think we've already issued them a permit.
You have this one?
I think it's just revising their, thank you, revising their area of cutting a little bit. So I don't think it really materially changes the project, but, we may want to pay them a quick visit just to make sure that we understand the changes to the project, because the survey doesn't really delineate the old area versus the new area, so it's not 100% clear. So I'm going to give the agent a call and just give him a quick follow-up, and I'll report back at the next meeting.
Let's see, harbor management, horseshoe crab survey.
Well, there's been a lot of activity on the horseshoe crab.
Oh, man, let me tell you.
Nobody's getting any sleep.
Everybody's
been on fire.
It's been a busy full moon. So
We finished last night on Lazy Point. Me and Jim did every night. I did the days as well, not that it was necessary, but it's just such an interesting survey. I'm glad we're part of it. I appreciate them allowing us to be part of this. I'm not sure how you guys did over at Northwest, but we ripped it over here in Lazy Point. What great numbers. We didn't get a lot of tags out, but I guess we're fortunate to have even gotten tags at all at such an early state. It wasn't really planned that we were going to start tagging. They kind of wanted us to, but I don't really think they thought we were going to get to that point this year. We did. It turned out Lazy Point was really a good spot. and they gave us a bunch of tags, and we installed 25, which isn't a lot on the grand scale. Up the island, they're doing hundreds and up to 1,000 or more.
And a moon cycle?
Yeah, yeah. But me and Jim, we're like 25. We can't wait to go back there in June and find one of them. We found a couple last night after having tagged them on the full moon night, and it was like finding lost treasure that you lost a day earlier on the beach. It was just so much fun. But we enjoyed it. We learned a lot, and we look forward to the trustees being involved in this as the years go on. I think it's a great study with a lot of great potential for so many different issues. How'd you make out, John?
I got the numbers here. Just question quick first. Where did you start and stop at Lazy Point?
We started at the, there's actually, we actually did just short of a kilometer. It was about 800 meters.
Yeah, okay.
And we started at, I want to say the boat dock at Lazy Point, but actually we started at the first sand road south of the dock, which really is from here to the supervisor's door, basically. So we started a little bit in, and we went all the way to the first house on the south, as we're walking south along Nappig Bay, the first house on Shore Road, I believe it's Shore Road. I'm not familiar with the name of that road. Yeah, yes, that's what it is, Crasson, right.
Okay.
So you went around Lazy Point, past the windsurfing area?
Past the windsurfing area to that first house that sits out in a nice rocky point there.
Okay.
Right.
And that's where we stopped.
It changed from Sandy Beach to...
Yeah, it's about 800 meters.
All right, good.
Yeah.
So in Northwest on the county park, our distance was about 900 meters. We started inside the harbor, more or less where the dinghies are pulled up on the beach, then went along the harbor to the point where the inlet is, around the point, and then back along the bay to where the creek drains the marsh. So we got 4 nights, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We got 22 on Sunday, 57 on Monday, 55 on Tuesday, which was the full moon, 20 on Wednesday. I missed last night. And Tom, over on the off Mile Hill Road, this was our original plan, was to compare, the county beach to the town beach off Mile Hill Road. I'm not sure what his distance was.
To the north up to the Grace Estate.
Yeah, I'm not sure how far, and I'm not
Like
sure he
Kirk's
went
place.
the same distance every night.
Right.
I know he said he did one
Might be a little
night.
shorter, but it's similar.
Yeah. He got 1 pair the first night, 1 single the second night, 4 pairs the full moon night, and 2 pairs on Wednesday night.
So what was your total on the new moon and the full moon?
I didn't do the new moon.
Okay.
I think you did.
Yeah, Susan has the numbers.
Yeah.
on the
Okay.
moon.
So what was it on full moon?
The full moon night?
Yeah,
55.
55. So just to give you the idea of for the comparison, the new moon we counted 167. On the full moon, we almost got 150. I think we're just short, 148 or 147.
Did yours start lower, rise into the full moon, and then fall off after the moon?
It did. Not so much. It did fall off, but not as considerable as it came up.
Right.
Like last night, we almost counted pretty close. I didn't actually ask him the total, but I think we were close to 70.
And you're saying individuals, right? In other words, if you saw a pair, that's counted as 2?
2, absolutely. Yeah, I'm counting totals, yeah.
What was your largest pairing? How many males on 1 female? Because we had 7 at
We had 8.
1.8.
Yeah, we had 8 males on a female was our biggest one. And I think that was last night.
Yeah, cool.
We may have had more than one like that, but that was That was it. And just interesting things, different colors we learned about the, you know, that they molt, and people were like, well, how can you tag them if they're molting? And, you know, they stop molting when they're sexually able to breed, and that's why we tag them during this point. So we're not tagging crabs that are going to molt. So it was really, really, really neat stuff. I mean,
It's beautiful to be out there spawning
forget it.
baitfish, the
Forget
crabs,
about it.
everything.
At night, at 11 o'clock at night, when you're walking knee-high in Napig Bay, the whippoorwills are singing in the dark, and you've got your flashlight, you got eels all around your feet in the grass, and you're counting these prehistoric wonders and the things you see. I mean, Jim brought his camera. I'm sure he sent the pictures to you all, some of the pictures he took with his underwater camera during the night. Just amazing stuff. Just amazing stuff that's out there. The crabs, the hermit crabs, the fiddler crabs. Oh, forget about it.
We're blessed with a wonderful local environment.
Unbelievable. What a spot. What an alive location. Just one of many.
Northwest is the same way.
Yeah, sure it is. Sure it is.
Breeding, you know, bait fish.
Yeah, I read that. How awesome was that? That was neat. Yeah, so much neat stuff out there.
One night I was walking and there were blowfish everywhere. Just one night.
Amazing.
And they wouldn't move. I touched them with my boot. They didn't even move.
We had a needlefish this long would follow us 2 nights in a row with a flashlight. Jimmy finally went up to it and just went to grab it, and he had it in his hands, and the thing shot out like a dart. But beautiful, beautiful. Amazing.
Cool.
All right. So is this going to happen again?
Yeah, I think the new moon and then the following
Of
full
June,
moon.
yeah.
Two more.
Oh, that's right.
Two
This
more
is-
moon cycles in the
Yeah.
spring.
And I'm not sure if it's I don't think it's going to be tagging. Maybe it might be for you because you didn't get the opportunity, but I'm not sure it's so much tagging as it is counting and seeing what tags from May will be present in the June count. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's what I remember him saying.
And Aubrey Peterson from the high school brought some of his students, and they did their own beach up by Alewife Brook Road, 1 or 2 nights. So he's probably going to do it the whole stretch the next time, too.
Nice.
So we'll probably get some good data out of it.
Right. All right. Napeag Lazy Point, we have a letter from Stephen Grimaldi about a sale of T. Courier's house at Lot 31N to D. Newworth. Also contract of sale received from Tom Osborne representing Mr. Courier. I'll read the letter. Please be advised that pursuant to Section 10? 5, okay. Paragraph D of the Rules and Regulations of Lazy Point leases Thomas Dawson Courier intends to transfer all of his ownership interest in the house situated at Trustee Lot 31N at Lazy Point to my client, Daniel Newworth, whereby the trustees would issue a new lease for Lot 31N that would reflect Mr. Newworth's name as tenant. In connection with the aforementioned, I have enclosed a copy of Mr. Newworth's New York State driver's license, Suffolk County voter's registration card, and an affidavit of domicile. Upon the trustees' acknowledgement of this request for the issuance of a new lease, I shall arrange for a notice of publication to appear in East Hampton Star. The trustees should note that Daniel Newworth is currently a tenant of the trustees for the property identified as Lot 21N, also known as 216 Shore Road. It is Mr. Newworth's intention to place the 216 Shore Road house on the market for sale upon approval of the trustees of his application for the new lease regarding Lot 31N. Have you seen this, Chris?
I have not.
Okay, would you want to take a look through it?
Absolutely. Thank you.
While he's doing that, do we want to talk about Merchant's Path?
Sure. The Roads Committee went out to Merchants Path earlier this week, and as Francis had indicated, there was a report of fencing and plantings very close to the roadbed, and it was. Some of the fencing was literally right up against the graded dirt roadbed.
Well, what had happened was apparently there was a fire back there and the Sag Harbor Fire Department couldn't get through because of these fences. And I got a call from Stephen Lynch about it.
It's tight. There's a section of split rail on one side that must run for 100 yards. That's maybe 2 feet off the roadbed. And on the left side, there's a little more of a decorative fence that's literally right on the roadbed. So Susan has been doing a great job with the research, was going to get a hold of some of the surveys and formal addresses and contact info, so that...
Yeah, put in the request to the building department. I'm just waiting for that information.
Are these fences on Trustee Road, or?
I would say it's a very, very high probability they're in the trustee property area. If the road is 3 rod wide, these roads are relatively narrow to begin with, the graded portion of them, and John, the fencing is literally right on the end of the grading.
Yeah, Dill has pictures.
Okay.
And then there's actually plantings of some trees that are right behind them, and they look like they're more landscape plantings than native trees that are just growing there.
Soaker hose, some of them had soaker hose.
So we do need to, I think, contact these homeowners and see if we can't work out a respectful plan to have them move back a little bit. And I think there was some discussion that Mr. Lynch might be able to do a little continuation of, a little wider
He
grading.
said he would regrade the roads and get them in good shape again.
Yeah, we were also thinking about maybe conferring with somebody from the fire department, because we're really was wondering what they need. What are they going to require? Because I'm not sure how much really we have to work with. I mean, grading the road will make it smoother, but that's not going to make it wider. If these fire trucks were having a hard time going down Merchants Path, how come? I don't understand how.
Well, they're wider.
The trucks were wider than the road?
Well, the trucks are wider than your typical vehicles.
Sure,
So they're
sure.
going to take up
And there's
more.
no way, I could definitely say, if a fire truck's on the part of Merchants Pass where we were, no cars are going to go either way by it.
Right.
That I understand, but that's not impeding the fire truck being able to access the road. So I'm wondering, what's going to solve the problem? If we took down the fence, if we had the homeowner take down the fence and Stephen Lynch grades the road, that's not solving a problem.
Unless he makes it a little wider, perhaps.
Okay.
Well, I
So
think
it would have to be a lot
they're really
wider.
asking for the fences to be stepped back, and I'm not sure.
Even having more shoulder would make it safer.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Okay.
it might pay to have a
The truck-
conversation with Mr. Lynch.
Well, we want to
and
make
maybe
sure
the
it's
fire
done,
department.
it would be done right to what the firemen need, not just assume that we might
The trucks
know.
today are enclosed cabs, so I don't know if there's a problem opening the doors to get out once they're down there.
Well, that could be as well.
I don't
But
know.
that's what I mean. Maybe we should get, maybe one of us should get, and I'd be willing to do it, get a fireman who's a driver
Buzzy-
to go,
Buzzy might be
yeah,
enough.
to take a walk down there, meet me down there and say, look, Del, here's where the problem is, and this is what we're going to need to, this is what would be the solution to fix this problem. And then we would know a little bit better how to move forward. Because like I say, I can't see by even moving the fence back and grading the road is going to make that much of a difference. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think why not save us from having to go back and do more work and take the person who made the request with us to really get, so we do it right the first time.
That's fine.
That's all.
I think a site visit with the fireman and maybe Mr. Lynch or Kevin, his deputy, to visit the site would be
I'll
appropriate.
work on that, because I'll talk to Stephen and,
Great,
yeah, okay.
super.
All right. 3 Mile Harbor, LWJ LLC, Estate of Duke, at 178 Springy Banks Road, dock repair.
Okay, this came in recently. This is a picture of the dock.
Oh, this is in,
This is Duke property.
okay, this is in addition to the bulkhead?
Yeah, different, this is a different applier. This is Keith Grimes.
Right, didn't we have one that was 180 Springy Banks for the Dukes, and then this is 178? They have two different addresses?
There's, well, there's actually 3 properties that are owned by the family. One of them with the has the house, and that's where the bulkhead work was that we approved last time. And then there's 2 undeveloped lots that they own, which I believe are to the north of the house lot. The dock is in front of the house lot. So I think it's the same property we looked at before, just that was the bulkhead removal and bluff work with InterScience. So this is the dock repair with Keith Grimes. So the request is to remove the decking, the timber framing, including the cross bracing, realign the CCA pilings, replace the stringers and the cross bracing with green heart, and replace the existing decking. So I bumped into Brian Frank the other day, asked him if he had seen this, if this was going to the ZBA. He said he had spoken to the office, Keith Grimes' office, and told them that he thought that the DEC might be requiring a fiberglass grating as a decking, new docks or dock repairs, significant dock repairs, in order to let more light through to vegetation underwater. And in his opinion, they should, find out what the DEC may require before they come to the ZBA, so they're not doing double work. I spoke to the office today also and, relayed that, my understanding and conversation. And they haven't applied yet to the ZBA or the DEC, and I guess Arlene's let me know that they also need an Army Corps permit, possibly. Not familiar with that. So she said, and another one of my questions was, what does realign the pilings mean? Because I'm not sure if that means they have to jet into the bottom and realign them. It probably does. That's not really explained. So I asked her what that meant. She wasn't sure. She was going to talk to her technical people and get back to me. I haven't heard back from her yet. So I think we should just hold off on this until we find out a little bit more about it.
Okay. And then we have an email received from Peter Mendelman, beach and SUV use at Maidstone Park. Did you guys get a copy of that?
I saw the picture, and
Yeah, I think Arlene sent us that letter.
Now, he has
I
this,
don't remember seeing that.
he has this addressed to the East Hampton Star, but I don't recall seeing it in there.
Is that the Mercedes in the surf, or in the water?
BMW.
Sorry, yeah.
There was some discussion about this last year, I recall.
Well, what we were doing is, there's no agreement to ban vehicles on that beach. However, the trucks are wearing away the dunes as you enter there because they're passing each other and they keep eroding away the edge of that. So we're going to put up fencing around the edge of the dune and then create an opening, I think 40 feet wide, to allow 2 vehicles to pass on and off there. Before it was agreed upon, they wanted to see it laid out. When we went down there to do it, it's like concrete. I mean, that whole beach, it's spoiled. So it is like concrete. And you don't need a truck to go on there. You can go on that beach with anything. In fact, one time, somebody had a Vespa down there. So this is a new board. I don't know what we want to do about this?
Well, education is so important to people that drive on the beach, to do it responsibly and to be safe. I think maybe it's an opportunity to have a conversation with CFAR and see if there can't be, more proactive education of new drivers and such on the beach. So that's a direction that we might want to consider.
Well, I don't see a beach permit on this vehicle either.
Yeah, you're always going to get some yahoos that are just not using good judgment as well. But, I think the community approach is always the best one if you can. And I think it's in everyone's best interest to avoid situations like this BMW in the harbor.
I think if that's the same one, we got a call on that at the police, and by the time Marine Patrol got down there, they were gone. They had gotten out, or somebody had gotten them out.
Yeah, tow truck.
Yeah.
I think it cost them quite a bit
Oh,
more.
yeah.
Rapid recovery.
Yeah.
They had called somebody, because they were gone by the time we got down there.
Well, there is some concern from some of the members of the community that, people like this irresponsible driver could cause, harm to the environment and may not be, acting safely. So,
Well, there's also people who want to go out down there without vehicles. So we have that pressure going on also.
yep, it's back and
Yeah,
forth.
there is an awful intense use of that beach with vehicles sometimes that
Yeah, it gets busy.
can cause issues, and
Yeah, because it's
Those
such a small
angers and
area.
stuff.
It's not like,
I
think
it's
we
not
should-
like going down the ocean. It's-
One idea would be to
I don't
have
understand why
a
people have to
finite
take a
number
car
of
on there
vehicles
because it's
in
such
that
a short
section.
walk.
Right.
well, I wonder if
parking
some
lot
kind of
gets the number of
a,
spaces
revisit
Yeah.
this fence idea and maybe put up or come up with some signage that would make people realize that too many vehicles on the beach is not a good thing if they can
How do
park
you even
outside.
enjoy it? I mean, you get 6 deep there and you're not even near the water. You're just in between vehicles. But whatever.
Well, I wonder if there's
That's how
a
they
way
enjoy
to discuss with the town maybe a better parking arrangement there that would allow more cars to park right near there, because that's one of the reasons I think people do use the beach. They don't want to walk from up in the corner where you probably have to park, because I know where I've gone there, I park as close to that, beach entrance as I can, but often I have to park pretty far down the road. So I don't know if there's a way of encouraging, head-in driving, head-in spaces as opposed to parallel parking along the road that might accommodate more cars along the road there, or not, but.
Sounds like Beaches Committee.
Yeah. I think reaching out to CFAR is a good step.
Everything
Yeah.
here looks
Having a
good.
conversation.
I'm obviously just not too familiar with the process yet, but looking at the rules and regulations, if this is a request for a new lease, then they need to have the environmental certificate and the tax bill as well attached. So I would say that it looks like they're requesting a new lease and they need those 2 documents as well.
Okay. Would they have a tax bill if they're the buyer?
Well, looks like buyer and seller are both represented here by their attorneys by a letter, so.
Okay.
It looks like their attorneys are speaking to one another, so between the 2 of them, they should be able to produce the tax bill.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Courier would have that as he's the current owner,
Right.
so he should be able to get that for us.
But, yeah, so I'd say it's lacking those 2 things to be a complete document.
Yeah, this is administrative. It came in April 27th with the affidavit of domicile, and he already lives there, and the contract of sale was received May 1st. They posted 3 weeks in the newspaper already, and they were expecting Brian and Jim, they were expecting them to vote on it today. It's actually been...
Well, if we're missing paperwork,
Then
though,
we don't ask for the tax, we ask for like the voters registration. And they're both taxpayers because they're both lease owners for over 2 years, yeah.
but you have the
Yeah, so I don't know how you guys do it in practice. By the rules, it's in addition to these items that are here, 2C1 and 2 say all new leases also need to be accompanied by signed notarized environmental certificate and a copy of the most recent Town of East Hampton tax bill. So
Well, that, we should do that. Can we make a vote subject to the tax bill then? In the practice of my training, I haven't been trained, we haven't been doing this.
nor have I. You can do whatever you please, but I'm just going by what I see in the
If we
rules
can
and
make a
regs.
vote subject to the receipt of it, and we'll run it by the committee and have them, they just can't vote on it until the next meeting.
That's fine with me.
If that's,
I mean, everything else is in order. I don't
Yeah.
see where it's a...
No, I
I'm
would
not
make
trying
a-
to be overly burdensome, I'm just going by.
No, we should get what's
No,
required.
I would make a motion subject to
Yes,
that
subject to.
paperwork being provided before the next meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You hand that back, please, Susan. Thank you.
who seconded that? Thank you.
Would you be able, Chris, forward an email on what we need?
For all new leases?
Well, for this...
For that one? Yeah, sure.
Great, thank you.
And Chris, do you have the attorney contacts you need in case you need to reach out?
I do. I know these attorneys and I have the contacts here as well.
Okay, great. All right, this one's not listed on this page, but
Did you get Harbor Lands?
Yeah.
number 2, 1,
that's
3,
what I
1?
have here,
Oh,
I
okay,
think,
thank you.
isn't
Vote
it?
on that one, maybe.
Gardeners Marina, is that?
Yeah, Harbor Lands LLC, I think so. I think that is correct.
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay, so,
You know, and I work for Seacoast Enterprises, so I have to recuse myself from this vote. I don't know if that affects
Oh,
our
well,
ability
then
to
we
vote
don't-
on it tonight.
well, I think it will.
All right, so,
We won't have a quorum.
Just for your information,
Yeah,
my understanding is that this is just a request for to close out the permit so that they can get a CO from the building department. Work was done. Brian Burns looked at it. And the only thing that they need to produce is an as-built survey, which is in the process of being made, as I understand. So I was going to make a motion to allow this to be closed out, subject to that, receiving that as-built survey, so, but I guess we'll have to do it next time.
yeah, we can.
sorry.
It's not your fault. Okay. Sorry, Peter.
You're on hold.
All right.
So-
Go ahead.
All right, you're going to go to administrative now? Hey, I have something like from Deepwater, Boehm, if that would fall.
Oh, do you want to bring that up?
business.
Sure, sure.
So back in February, we had written a letter to Boehm requesting a study be done on EMFs and their effects on migratory fish. And I spoke to Dr. Boatman today, who's the head of the environmental studies program. She sent me back, she told me that a study has been proposed by Boehm. She sent me an email, says, in response to your study suggestion, we prepared a proposed study to incorporate in our studies planning process. After internal review and discussion, we're including the study in our studies development plan as number 2 on our priority list. This is for funding in fiscal year 2019, which begins October 2018. We would hope to have a final report at the end of 2019. So it sounds to me like they are going to fund a study with an approximate cost of $300,000, which will begin in October of 2018, or at least the request will go out in October. And it's called Evaluation of Potential Electromagnetic Field Effects on Fish Species of Commercial and Recreational Fishing Importance. And this was pretty much specifically at our request, I
Yeah,
guess.
that's awesome, John. It's very relevant, you know, with obviously all this interest in offshore energy production and transmission lines being run. Do you think there'll be an opportunity for us to weigh in on this a little bit as it gets underway?
I'm not sure. I mean, I talked to her. This was sent, she's in New Bedford. This was sent by her assistant in Washington. And I haven't spoken to him, so I was going to try to
Okay.
get a little bit more information about this.
Excellent.
I'm assuming this will be something that goes out as a request for well, it won't be a request for proposal, but somehow this will be farmed out to academia or
Right.
some researchers.
Mhm.
And it would be nice if we could get somebody from, Long Island to perform this study.
Yep, yep. Yeah, like a
This
Dr.
may not
Peterson or
be,
somebody.
this may not be, the complete,
Complete picture.
completely
But
satisfactory
it's a
study
new,
to
it's a
many
new
people.
perspective on this, which is
It would be good to get something going along these
Yeah.
lines.
excellent. Really good, John. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right. That's it on that, John?
Let me just, one more
Yeah.
thing, and let me just, it says, this study will identify the commercial and recreational fish and evaluate their potential for being impacted by electromagnetic fields. This will include examining studies globally where cables are already present. Again, I'm not completely familiar with this, but what we asked for was ideally a study which would identify the migratory patterns before and after cable installation. That's really the only way you're going to know what this cable would have, the effect it would have on these fish. Now, obviously, that would require the installation of the cable. This study, as far as I understand reading this quickly, is going to really be a literature review study. In other words, we're going to try to do an extensive literature review of the effects of EMFs from existing cables on migratory fish. So this, I'm not sure if this, how specific to Long Island this is going to be.
Site-specific, species-specific.
Right,
Well, it's a start.
but it's a
Sorry.
start.
Yeah, yep. No, we need more work like this to be done
Right,
if we're really going to understand this new era of energy
right.
and its impacts on our local marine ecosystem.
So I'll try to get some more information from them about, what could be done.
Who, what, where, and when
or,
kind of thing.
in the field type thing, as opposed to literature studies.
And we-
This literature study could build on
lead to that.
future studies.
Yeah, or some site-specific studying maybe
Right.
somewhere nearby.
Right.
Excellent. That's really great, John.
All right, payment of the bills. Edson International, $267 for Montauk Pump Out Boat. It looks like a pump frame.
I make a motion, we pay the bill.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We have minutes and financial report. Anyone want to make a motion to table these until?
I think in fairness to all the members, they
Right.
should be tabled so that they can have a
Yeah, I
chance
make
to
a
weigh in.
motion, we table both the minutes and the financial reports till we have a
Second.
full group.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, report of the clerk. Okay, so a pump-out boat, annually, we apply for grant funding to help pay for the cost of running these things. Our most current application has been approved.
Excellent.
Good.
Lori's retirement went into effect at the end of today, so
Yay, Lori.
she's now officially a part-timer.
Wow.
Okay, we haven't completed the full-time employment of Arlene yet, but we are working on it diligently. Should I be talking about this now? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's that, and we would like to do a little something for her, so we'll talk about that separately. All right, correspondence, notice from the League of Women Voters. Jim Grimes and I are going to sit on a forum entitled "The Role and Challenges of the East Hampton and Southampton Town Trustees." That'll take place on June 11th at 7 o'clock at the Bridgehampton Library. Surfrider Foundation Water Quality Report was received. So that was received, if anybody wants to take a look at it.
Is that the one they email us?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. DEC report we've been getting every week on harmful algal blooms. East Hampton's clean still. Not so much over in, how was it?
Shinnecock?
Lakefront
Lakefront
Concomitant.
Concomitant,
Had some
yeah.
trouble. I know the Great South Bay is also having a lot of trouble. So hopefully we can learn from some of their mistakes and do a better job of keeping our waters clean.
Yeah, well, Agawam also is confirmed with high toxins.
Yeah, struggling.
All right, and we got a letter of appreciation from Diane McNally, otherwise known as a thank you note for helping her out in her.
Getting back to that League of Women Voters, June 11th, that's our meeting night.
Well, we haven't set the meeting, but can we do it on a Tuesday? Would anybody be able to?
I've already arranged to get off that night on a mutual committee because our meeting was scheduled for June 11th.
What meeting? Our regular?
Our regular
No,
trustee meeting is June 11th.
That's the regular meeting?
Is that a Monday?
Yes, it's a Monday.
Our second, is that the second Monday?
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll have to
First
run it.
meeting of June.
Okay. That's fine.
Okay, so Rick will fill in and run it.
And Susan will be back, and Brian, we'll get Brian, make sure Brian attends so we have a quorum.
Hopefully Bill will be
And Bill,
back.
yeah.
And the Peconic Estuary Program, upcoming events. Do we,
The Peconic Estuary Program sort of, looking for a new direction. So they're having some forums, public forums, and, looking for public input. I think these upcoming events, might take a look at these and consider if we want to weigh in on it.
I haven't seen much of their presence in East Hampton. It seems like they've been more Riverhead, Southampton centric. And I think as with the Horseshoe Crab program, when these organizations become more visible in East Hampton, there's almost like a pent-up interest in getting involved.
Yeah.
So if we could get them
I've been going to some of the meetings trying to figure out where we fit
plug in, yeah.
And like I said, they just got a new director, and they're doing a lot of sort of background research type work. And you're right, a lot of their stuff is being done on the North Fork, Riverhead area. And maybe that's something we can,
Maybe a little pilot event or project that we could consider working with them on,
right.
Here in East Hampton.
I'll speak to Sarah and Elizabeth and see if maybe there's something we can
Partner on.
get together on out here. Just a small thing.
That'd be great.
Good idea.
okay, they are holding a fundraising event June 22nd from 5 to 8 p.m. at the Macari Vineyards in Cutchogue. Tickets are $40 per person, if anybody's interested. And that's all I have. Does anybody have anything?
Do I keep this?
Yeah, we'll keep that, because I think Jim wanted to talk about that too, so we'll save that for the next
Okay.
meeting.
Could I just go back to one thing on the mosquito testing? I forgot to mention. We asked Nicole Mayer from the Nature Conservancy, who's really the lead researcher on this whole marsh mosquito idea, if she would come and give a little presentation for the board. So hopefully she'll be able to do that on the 11th or the following meeting. We suggested the 11th. I haven't.
So she's going to come and visit with us at the meeting?
She's going to come give a little
Excellent.
presentation on
That's great.
what we're doing, why we're doing it, what's being done along these lines in other parts of the region.
Excellent.
Okay, great. Anybody else? No? Do I have a motion?
I make a motion, we close this meeting.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.